When my daughter tried to poison me on the night of my $100 million lottery celebration, I switched our wine glasses without a word. 30 minutes later, her own mother collapsed in front of everyone. That's when I realized family ties can sometimes be nooses in disguise. If you're watching this, subscribe and comment below if you've ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were. Trust me, you'll want to follow this story to the bitter end. I never believed in luck. Not the good kind, anyway. Life had taught me that fortune was something you carved out with your bare hands, not something that fell into your lap like ripe fruit. So when I found myself staring at those matching numbers on my lottery ticket, the ones worth $100 million, I couldn't stop laughing. A bitter, hollow kind of laugh that scared even me. 60 years old. Widowed for 12. Worked 3 jobs most of my life. Raised 2 children largely on my own. And now, just when my knees had started to give out and my back curved like a question mark at the end of each shift, the universe decided to play this cosmic joke on me. Margaret Wilson, the lottery official had said, smiling too widely for my comfort. How does it feel to be worth 9 figures? Worth. As if a human being's value could be measured in dollars. I'd been worth exactly the same the day before when I'd been counting quarters for gas. Overwhelming, I'd answered, my voice steady despite the cameras flashing in my face. I need time to process this.
But there was no time.
The moment the news hit, my phone exploded with messages. Old friends, distant relatives, even my ex-husband Derek, who'd abandoned our family 20 years ago for a cocktail waitress in Vegas, suddenly remembered my existence. And then there were my children. Jason, my son, called from Seattle where he worked as an engineer. He was shocked, concerned, and immediately protective. Mom, you need a financial advisor. A lawyer. Security even. Don't tell anyone where you're staying. My daughter Charlotte, Lottie as she preferred, had a different reaction entirely. Mommy, she'd squealed over the phone, her voice dripping with an enthusiasm I hadn't heard directed at me since she was 10 years old, and I'd promised her a puppy. I just saw the news. I'm booking a flight home right now. Lottie was 35, married to Richard, a man who wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent, but somehow always seemed to be between opportunities. They had twin boys I barely knew, Brandon and Bradley, 8 years old with perpetually sticky hands and vacant expressions from too much screen time. Our relationship had been strained for years. Lottie blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in her life, from her father's abandonment to the fact that I couldn't afford to pay for her dream wedding or her Ivy League education. She'd taken out loans, worked through college, and never let me forget that other mothers had done more for their daughters. What she conveniently forgot was how I'd worked myself to the bone to keep her fed, clothed, and housed. How I'd gone without meals so she could have dance lessons. How I'd sewn her prom dress by hand because we couldn't afford the one she wanted from the boutique. But now, suddenly, I was mommy again. And she was coming home. It needs to be spectacular, Lottie insisted, pacing around my modest living room 2 days after my win. She'd flown in that morning, leaving Richard and the boys to follow the next day. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, Mother. We need to celebrate properly. I sat in my worn armchair, watching her move around the space with distaste, as if my simple furniture might contaminate her designer clothes. I was thinking of making a sizable donation to the community center, I said. Maybe fund some scholarships for her. Donations? Already. She stopped pacing, her perfect eyebrows arching high. Mother, you haven't even received the money yet. There will be plenty of time for charity later. What you need now is to announce your arrival into society. Society. I almost laughed. Lottie, I'm 60 years old. I've been a cashier at Johnson's Grocery for the last 15 years. What society am I arriving into? She waved her hand dismissively. The wealthy one. The one that matters. There it was, the subtle dig, the implication that my life until now had been insignificant. That I hadn't mattered. I matter regardless of my bank account, I said quietly. She didn't even acknowledge my words. I'm thinking a gala. Something elegant at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown. We'll invite everyone who's anyone. You'll need a new wardrobe, of course. Those polyester blouses won't do anymore. I looked down at my favorite blue blouse. It was worn at the collar, true, but it was comfortable. It was me. And we'll need to talk about living arrangements, she continued. This place. She gestured around my small 2-bedroom apartment. It's not suitable anymore. Richard and I have been looking at properties. There's a magnificent estate in Westbrook Hills. 6 bedrooms, pool, tennis court. The boys would love it.
We.
I asked, catching the pronoun. You've been house hunting for me? For us, she corrected, not meeting my eye. Families should stick together, mother. Especially now. Something cold slithered down my spine. I'd raised Lottie. I knew her tells. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was hiding something. The slight pitch change of her voice when she was being less than truthful. Lottie, I said carefully, I haven't made any decisions about the money yet. She turned to me, her smile tightening. Of course not. But you will need guidance. People will try to take advantage of you. People like you? I wanted to ask but held my tongue. Instead, I nodded. You're right. That's why I've already scheduled meetings with 3 different financial advisors next week. Her smile faltered. Which firms? Ones that Jason recommended. At the mention of her brother, Lottie's nostrils flared slightly. She and Jason had never gotten along. Where Lottie demanded, Jason earned. Where she took, he gave. They were as different as 2 siblings could be, though they shared the same stubborn chin, my chin. Jason, she scoffed. What does he know about wealth management? He builds bridges for a living. He's an engineer with an MBA, I corrected. And he's already looked into the tax implications, trust options, and… Fine, she interrupted, waving a hand. Have your meetings. But the party is non-negotiable. I've already made some calls. I should have put my foot down then. Should have asserted that this was my money, my life, my decision. But old habits die hard. For decades, I'd been the peacekeeper, the one who bent to keep the family from breaking. So I nodded, already feeling the tension headache forming behind my eyes. Nothing too extravagant, I conceded. And I want Jason involved in the planning too. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Of course. Family first, right, mother? The way she said family made it sound like a business arrangement rather than a bond of love. But I ignored the warning bell in my head. After all, she was my daughter. My flesh and blood. Surely the money was just making us all a little crazy. I couldn't have imagined then just how crazy things would get. The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom glittered like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over tables draped in cream silk. Centerpieces of white roses and orchids rose like elegant towers. A string quartet played softly in the corner. And I felt completely out of place. Despite the new dress, a midnight blue gown that cost more than 3 months of my previous salary, and the professional hair and makeup Lottie had insisted upon, I felt like an imposter. These weren't my people. This wasn't my world. Most of the guests weren't my people either. There were a few familiar faces, neighbors, co-workers from the grocery store, my bridge club friends, but they looked as uncomfortable as I felt, clutching their champagne flutes with nervous hands. The rest were strangers. Lottie's friends, business associates of Richard's, local politicians. Even the mayor had shown up, eager to rub shoulders with the town's newest millionaire. You look lost in your own party, came a familiar voice. I turned to find Jason at my side, handsome in his dark suit, his kind eyes, so like his father's, crinkling with concern. That obvious, huh? I smiled, relief washing over me. Jason had flown in just that morning, delayed by an important project deadline. Only to me. He kissed my cheek. Quite the spectacle Lottie's arranged. Too much, I admitted. But she was determined. She's always determined, he said, a edge to his voice. Have you signed anything she's put in front of you? The question caught me off guard.
What? No.
Why would you ask that? Jason's expression darkened. She's been calling me, asking about power of attorney forms, joint accounts, trust structures, where she'd be the co-trustee. When I wouldn't help, she apparently found someone who would. Just be careful, Mom. A chill ran through me. She's just excited, Jason. Overeager. She's never been interested in family unity before. Why start now when there's $100 million on the table? He took a sip of his drink, eyes scanning the room. Where is she anyway? Greeting guests with Richard. I nodded toward the entrance, where Lottie stood in a crimson dress that hugged her slender figure, laughing with the police chief as if they were old friends. And who's that woman with them? Jason asked. She looks familiar. I followed his gaze and felt my stomach drop. Standing beside Richard was a slender woman in her late 50s, her blonde hair elegantly coiffed, her smile wide and practiced. That's Patricia, I said, my voice tight. Lottie's mother. Jason nearly choked on his drink. ¿Es este mon Patricia? Dad's second wife, Patricia? The woman who tried to get custody of Lottie after the divorce, Patricia? The very same. Patricia had been the other woman, the reason my marriage to Derek had ended. She'd been younger, prettier, more sophisticated. Everything I wasn't. Derek had left me for her when Lottie was 10 and Jason was 12. The divorce had been ugly. Patricia had convinced Derek to sue for custody of Lottie, claiming I was an unfit mother because I worked too many hours. They'd lost, but not before dragging my name through the mud and depleting what little savings I had on legal fees. 2 years later, Derek had left Patricia too, disappearing to Vegas with wife number 3. But by then, the damage was done. Lottie had become distant, rebellious, convinced that life with her father and Patricia would have been glamorous and easy compared to our struggling existence. What the hell is she doing here? Jason's voice had gone cold. I have no idea, I admitted. Lottie didn't tell me she was invited, because she knew you'd say no. Before I could respond, Lottie spotted us and waved, pulling Patricia along as she made her way through the crowd. Mother, there you are. Look who surprised us by flying in. Lottie's voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were calculating as she watched for my reaction. Patricia extended manicured fingers. Margaret, you look well. Congratulations on your good fortune. I took her hand briefly, noticing the heavy diamond on her ring finger. Apparently, she'd found husband number 2. Or 3. I'd lost count. Patricia, this is unexpected.
Lottie insiste d'uno come.
She said it was time to put the past behind us. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Water under the bridge, right? Jason made a sound somewhere between a cough and a snort. Funny, considering how hard you tried to drown my mother in that water. Jason, I warned quietly. Patricia's smile tightened. You always were protective of your mother. It's admirable if misguided. Ancient history isn't worth the energy of anger. It's not ancient when the wounds still bleed, he replied. The tension crackled between them. I placed a hand on Jason's arm, squeezing gently. This is supposed to be a celebration, I said. Let's keep it civil. Lottie clapped her hands together. Exactly. Mother, they're ready for the toast. Everyone's waiting. She practically dragged me toward the center of the room, where Richard stood with a microphone. The string quartet fell silent as he tapped on his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted, all eyes turning our way. Richard, ever the showman, beamed at the crowd. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate an extraordinary woman, my mother-in-law, Margaret Wilson. Polite applause rippled through the room. Just a few weeks ago, Margaret was an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Now, she stands before you one of the wealthiest individuals in the state. Talk about a Cinderella story. More applause, though I noticed my grocery store coworkers exchanging glances. To them, I wasn't some Cinderella. I was Maggie who covered their shifts when their kids were sick, who brought homemade soup when Mr. Jenkins, the store manager, lost his wife to cancer, who knew every regular customer by name. Fortune has smiled upon the Wilson family, Richard continued, and we couldn't be more thrilled to embark on this new chapter together. Because that's what family does. They stick together through thick and thin. Jason's hand found mine, squeezing tight. The warning in his touch was unmistakable. And now Lottie would like to say a few words, followed by a special toast. Richard handed the microphone to my daughter, who took it with practiced grace. My mother has always been persistent, Lottie began, choosing her words carefully. Some might even say stubborn. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. She's faced hardships that would break most people. Raised 2 children alone. Worked jobs that were beneath her potential. Sacrificed everything for her family. I blinked in surprise. This wasn't the Lottie I knew, the one who complained about my embarrassing jobs, who resented my inability to give her the life she thought she deserved. And now, the universe has finally rewarded her patience and her perseverance. Lottie's voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. I couldn't be prouder to be her daughter, to be part of her legacy. Legacy. The word hung in the air like a promise or a threat. So please, everyone, raise your glasses. Lottie gestured, and waiters appeared, distributing flutes of champagne and goblets of red wine. Richard handed me a large crystal goblet filled with deep crimson liquid. Your favorite Cabernet, Margaret. Imported from France, just for tonight. I took it automatically, surprised he knew my wine preference. I couldn't recall ever discussing it with him. To my mother, Lottie continued, raising her glass high. May this fortune bring you all the happiness you deserve, and may our family grow even stronger in its warm glow. To Margaret, the crowd echoed. I raised my glass, the heavy crystal catching the light. As I brought it to my lips, a strange scent reached my nostrils. Something sharp beneath the fruity bouquet of the wine. Metallic. Bitter. Not right. My hand froze, the wine a centimeter from my mouth. Years of warning my children about household chemicals, of checking expiration dates, of smelling milk before pouring it, instincts honed by decades of caution, screamed at me to stop. I lowered the glass slightly, glancing at Lottie. She was watching me intently, her own glass untouched, her expression a mask of anticipation. Not the face of a daughter sharing a joyful moment with her mother. The face of someone waiting for something to happen. Without breaking eye contact, I slowly placed my glass down on the nearby table. Is something wrong with the wine? Patricia asked, stepping closer. No, I said, making a split-second decision I would replay in my mind for months to come. Just a bit too heavy for me right now. Why don't you try it? You always did prefer the expensive labels. I picked up my glass and offered it to her. A petty gesture, perhaps, letting her have what was meant for me, as she had taken so much else. Patricia hesitated, then smiled that superior smile I remembered all too well. Well, if you're sure. No sense in letting good wine go to waste. She set her champagne down and took my goblet, raising it in a small salute before taking a generous sip. Excellent vintage, she pronounced. Your son-in-law has good taste, at least. Lottie's face had gone pale. Mother, maybe you should try it after all. It was specially selected for. I'm fine with champagne, I interrupted, taking a flute from a passing waiter. Let's mingle. So many people have come to celebrate. I moved away, pulling Jason with me, a strange uneasiness settling in my stomach. Lottie's reaction to the wine exchange had been odd. Too concerned. Too insistent. You okay, Mom? Jason asked quietly.
Fine, I lead.
Just overwhelmed. For the next half hour, I circulated through the room, accepting congratulations, deflecting questions about my plans for the money, trying to ignore the weight of Lottie's gaze following me. Every few minutes, I glanced back at Patricia, who seemed to be enjoying herself immensely, laughing too loudly, gesturing expansively, the wine goblet never far from her lips. Until suddenly, she wasn't. The first sign that something was wrong came when Patricia stumbled slightly, reaching out to steady herself against a chair. Are you all right? Someone asked. Just a little lightheaded, she replied, her words slurring slightly. Probably the excitement. But within minutes, it was clear this was more than excitement. Her face had gone ashen, beads of sweat forming on her forehead despite the cool air in the ballroom. She raised a hand to her throat, eyes widening in panic. I can't, she gasped. Can't breathe properly. Then her legs seemed to give way, and she collapsed, the wine glass shattering on the marble floor beside her. The room erupted into chaos. Someone shouted for a doctor. Guests backed away in alarm. Phones came out, dialing emergency services. I stood frozen, watching as Richard knelt beside Patricia, loosening the collar of her dress. Her body had begun to shake violently, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth. "What's happening to her?" Richard demanded, looking around wildly. "Did anyone see what happened?" And then Lottie was there, screaming, her face a perfect picture of shock and terror. Too perfect. Too performative.
Mom.
"Oh my God, Mom." It took me a moment to realize she was referring to Patricia, not me. Though I had raised her, though I had been there for every skinned knee and broken heart, Patricia had somehow become Mom, while I remained Mother, formal, distant. As the paramedics rushed in, as they loaded Patricia onto a stretcher, her body still convulsing, I found myself watching Lottie instead of the woman fighting for her life. Watching as she clutched at Patricia, wailing dramatically. Watching as she demanded to ride in the ambulance. Watching as she played the role of devastated daughter to perfection. But then, just before she followed the stretcher out, Lottie's eyes met mine across the chaotic room. And in that brief, unguarded moment, I saw it: confusion, anger, calculation. And I knew, with a certainty that turned my blood to ice, that the wine had been meant for me. My own daughter had tried to poison me. The hospital waiting room was a special kind of purgatory. Harsh fluorescent lights made everyone look sickly. The antiseptic smell failed to mask the underlying sense of fear and grief. Plastic chairs designed to prevent comfort forced the body into constant, subtle motion. I sat perfectly still, my new dress incongruously elegant in the sterile environment, watching the small drama unfold before me. Lottie paced frantically, her red dress a slash of color against the beige walls. Richard stood by the vending machine, repeatedly checking his phone. And Jason sat beside me, solid and quiet, his presence my only anchor in a world that had suddenly tilted on its axis. "This is insane," he whispered, so only I could hear. "You really think, Lottie?" "I know what I saw," I interrupted softly. "The way she watched me with that glass. Her panic when I gave it to Patricia instead. This wasn't food poisoning or an allergic reaction, Jason. This was deliberate." His face hardened. "We need to tell the police." "And say what? That I have a feeling my daughter tried to poison me? With what evidence?" "The wine
Is gone."
shattered on the ballroom floor. I squeezed his hand. "Besides, we don't know for sure yet. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the shock making me paranoid." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The pieces fit too perfectly: Lottie's sudden reappearance in my life after the lottery win, the talk of joint accounts and shared homes, the insistence on throwing a lavish party where she controlled every detail, down to the wine selection. My daughter had looked at my good fortune and seen not a blessing for the mother who had sacrificed everything for her, but an obstacle to her own desires. An obstacle she had decided to remove. The thought made me physically ill. A doctor emerged from the double doors, his face grave. Lottie rushed forward. "How is she? Is she going to be all right?" The doctor glanced around the small group. "Are you family?" "I'm her daughter," Lottie said. "Please tell me what's happening." "Your mother is stabilized but critical. We've pumped her stomach and are administering activated charcoal. The toxicology results aren't back yet, but her symptoms are consistent with poisoning." The word hung in the air like an accusation. "Poisoning?" Richard echoed, finally looking up from his phone. "That's impossible. It was just wine." "We found traces of what appears to be ethylene glycol in her system," the doctor continued. "It's commonly found in antifreeze." Antifreeze. The bottle I kept in my garage for my old Buick. The bottle that had been half empty the last time I checked, though I hadn't topped off the car in months. "Will she recover?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The doctor turned to me, his expression guarded. "It's too soon to tell. The next 24 hours will be critical. If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with the police. They have some questions about what she consumed tonight." As he walked away, Lottie collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. This is a nightmare, she sobbed. Poor Mom. Who would do such a thing? I watched her cry, searching for any sign of genuine grief. Instead, I saw calculation behind each tear. This was a performance, carefully crafted for the benefit of the hospital staff, for Richard, for Jason, and especially for me. The police will want to talk to all of us, Jason said, his voice tight. They'll want to know who had access to the wine, who served it, who might have had a motive. Lottie's head snapped up.
A motive?
This was obviously a terrible accident. Or maybe someone at the hotel made a mistake. Mixed chemicals with the cleaning supplies, perhaps. In one specific glass? Jason challenged. Seems unlikely. What are you suggesting? Her voice had taken on a dangerous edge. I'm not suggesting anything, he replied evenly. Just stating facts. The police will investigate. They'll find out what happened. The look Lottie gave him could have frozen hell itself. They won't find anything, because there's nothing to find. It was an accident. Then you have nothing to worry about, I said quietly. Her eyes darted to mine, and for a split second, I saw naked fear there. Then her mask slipped back into place. Of course I'm worried. My mother is fighting for her life. Not your mother, I wanted to say. The woman who helped destroy our family. The woman you chose over me time and again. But I held my tongue. A police officer entered the waiting room, notebook in hand. Mrs. Wilson? I'm Detective Ramirez. I'd like to ask you a few questions about tonight's events. I stood, smoothing down my dress. Of course. Mom, you don't have to do this now, Lottie interjected. You're in shock. This can wait until morning. I'm fine, I assured her, though the irony of her sudden concern wasn't lost on me. I want to help however I can. Detective Ramirez led me to a quieter corner of the waiting room. He was a compact man with intelligent eyes and the weary posture of someone who had seen too much of humanity's darker side. First, let me express my sympathies for what happened at your celebration, he began. Thank you, but Patricia isn't family, I clarified. She's my ex-husband's second wife. His eyebrow raised slightly. I see. And yet she was at your lottery celebration? My daughter invited her without telling me. They've remained close over the years. He made a note. Can you walk me through what happened tonight? Specifically regarding the wine that Ms. Everton consumed. I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. If I shared my suspicions, I'd be accusing my own daughter of attempted murder, with little proof beyond my intuition and a strange exchange of glances. The wine was part of a toast, I began. My son-in-law Richard handed me a glass of red wine. When I went to drink it, I noticed an unusual smell, something metallic. And then, I set it down. Patricia commented on my hesitation, and I offered her the wine instead. She accepted. Why did you give her your glass? The question caught me off guard. I suppose it was just a spontaneous gesture. She's always been fond of expensive things. And approximately how long after drinking the wine did Ms. Everton show symptoms? About 30 minutes. Maybe less. She seemed fine at first, then suddenly became unsteady. Then she collapsed. He nodded, writing quickly. Did you notice anyone near the drinks before they were served? Anyone who might have had the opportunity to tamper with them? Again, I hesitated. The event was catered. There were waiters circulating. Richard was in charge of the toast arrangements. Beyond that, I couldn't say. I understand your daughter Lottie organized the event. Yes. And she was close to the victim? They've maintained a relationship over the years, yes. The detective studied me for a moment. Mrs. Wilson, is there something you're not telling me? You seem hesitant. I met his gaze steadily. It's been a shocking night, Detective. I'm still processing what happened. Of course. He handed me his card. If you think of anything else, anything at all, please call me directly. We'll be investigating this thoroughly. As I took the card, a commotion erupted by the double doors. A medical team rushed past, shouting orders. A moment later, alarms began to sound from within the treatment area. Lottie was on her feet instantly. What's happening? Is it Mom? A nurse hurried out, her expression grim. Family of Patricia Everton? Here. Lottie pushed forward. I'm her daughter. What's wrong? She's gone into cardiac arrest. The doctors are trying to stabilize her, but you should prepare yourselves. The toxin has caused significant organ damage. Lottie let out a wail that echoed through the waiting room. Richard wrapped his arms around her, murmuring soothing words. It was a touching tableau of grief, except for the fact that Lottie's eyes remained dry, calculating, sweeping the room to gauge the reaction to her performance. Those eyes eventually landed on me, and in them, I saw not grief for Patricia, but fury directed at me. The unspoken accusation was clear. This should have been you. My own flesh and blood was looking at me with murderous rage because I had survived. Jason appeared at my side, his hand firm on my shoulder. We should go home, he said quietly. There's nothing more we can do here tonight. But the police, I began. Have your contact information. They'll call if they need anything else. His voice dropped even lower. I don't think you should be around Lottie right now. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The weight of the evening, the celebration, the poisoning, the horrible realization about my daughter, pressed down on me like a physical force. As Jason guided me toward the exit, Lottie broke away from Richard and intercepted us. You're leaving, she demanded, her voice brittle. My mother is fighting for her life, and you're just walking out? You seem to have everything under control. I replied, my tone neutral.
I'm tired, Lottie.
It's been a long night. It would have been even longer if you'd drunk that wine, she said, then immediately seemed to realize her mistake. Her eyes widened, and she backpedaled quickly. I mean, thank God you didn't. You might be in there too. I couldn't bear to lose both of you. Both of you. As if Patricia and I held equal places in her heart. As if she hadn't just revealed exactly what she'd intended. Get some rest, Lottie, I said, stepping around her. Call us if there's any change in Patricia's condition. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. I'll be staying at your place tonight. Obviously, I can't go back to the hotel after this. It wasn't a request. It was a demand and a threat. She wanted access to my home.
To me.
Actually, Jason interjected smoothly. Mom's staying with me tonight. At my hotel. We've already arranged it. Since when? Lottie challenged. Since now, he replied, his tone brooking no argument. You can stay at Mom's place if you want. Alone. The siblings stared at each other, decades of rivalry and distrust crystallizing in that moment. Finally, Lottie released my arm. Fine, she spat.
Take her side.
You always do. There are no sides here, Lottie, I said wearily. Only a family in crisis. She laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Family? Is that what we are? Because tonight has made me wonder. So have I replied quietly. We left her standing there, her red dress like a wound against the sterile hospital backdrop, her face twisted with frustration and something darker, something that sent chills down my spine as Jason led me into the night. She tried to kill you. Jason paced the hotel room, his tie loosened, his face haggard in the dim light. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my party dress, feeling like an actress who had wandered onto the wrong stage. We don't know that for certain, I said, though the words rang hollow even to my own ears. Mom, stop. He knelt before me, taking my hands in his. I saw her face when you switched glasses. I heard what she said at the hospital. She put antifreeze in your wine. She tried to murder you for your money. Hearing it stated so plainly made my chest constrict painfully. My own daughter, I whispered. My little girl. She's not that little girl anymore, Jason said gently. She hasn't been for a long time. And he was right, of course. The Lottie who had once brought me dandelion bouquets and fallen asleep against my shoulder during thunderstorms had vanished years ago, replaced by a woman whose love had always been conditional, whose respect had to be purchased. But to go from resentment to attempted murder, the leap seemed incomprehensible. The money changed her, I said.
No.
Jason shook his head firmly. The money just revealed who she already was, who she's been becoming for years. He was right about that too. The signs had been there, the manipulation, the entitlement, the the barely concealed contempt. I had chosen to ignore them, to make excuses, to hope that time would heal whatever wounds had turned my daughter so bitter. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling lost in a way I hadn't since those first awful days after Derek left. "First, you need to be safe. You can't go back to your apartment. Lottie has keys. I can change the locks." "And then what? Wait for her to try again? Because she will, Mom. She's already crossed a line most people can't even imagine approaching." A terrible thought occurred to me. "Patricia, if she dies, then it's murder," Jason finished grimly. "And Lottie will either be a suspect or she'll find a way to pin it on someone else. Either way, we need to protect you. I should call Detective Ramirez. Tell him my suspicions." "With what proof?" "The police already know the wine was poisoned. They'll investigate. But accusing your daughter of attempted murder without evidence could backfire spectacularly." He was right again. Lottie was charming, persuasive, and now, clearly dangerous. If I accused her, without proof, she might convince others I was suffering from paranoia, perhaps even early dementia. An elderly woman suddenly coming into money, becoming confused, making wild accusations against her own child. It was the perfect setup to have me declared incompetent, to gain control of my fortune through guardianship. A chill ran through me as I realized this might have been her backup plan all along. "We need to be strategic," I said, a new resolve hardening within me. "If Lottie wants war, she'll get one. But we'll fight on my terms." Jason looked surprised, then nodded with grim approval. "What's the first move?" "I need to talk to my lawyer. First thing tomorrow. Change my will, set up protective trusts. Make it impossible for Lottie to benefit from my death." "She'll fight it. Let her try." I straightened my shoulders, feeling a strange calm descend. "I've spent my life being underestimated, Jason. By your father, by Patricia, by society, and yes, by Lottie. That ends now." A noise from the hallway made us both start. Just hotel guests returning to their room, but it underscored how on edge we were. "Try to get some sleep," Jason advised. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." But sleep eluded me. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening's events in my mind. The party, the toast, the slight hesitation before Patricia accepted the wine, the collapse. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "I know what you think you saw. You're wrong. Dangerous people want your money. I was trying to protect you. Call me when you're alone." A second text followed immediately. "Don't tell Jason. He's always been jealous of our relationship. He's poisoning you against me." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only was she denying her actions, but she was trying to turn me against my son, the one person who had consistently been there for me, who had never asked for anything in return. I turned off the phone without responding, a cold clarity settling over me. In trying to kill me, Lottie had inadvertently done something else entirely. She had awakened a part of me I'd forgotten existed, the fighter who had survived abandonment, poverty, and heartbreak. The woman who had raised 2 children alone while working multiple jobs. The mother who would do anything to protect what was hers, including bringing down her own daughter, if necessary. Outside the hotel window, the city lights winked like distant stars. Somewhere out there, Patricia lay fighting for her life, an unintended victim in Lottie's scheme. Somewhere else, Lottie was undoubtedly plotting her next move, recalculating now that her initial plan had failed so spectacularly. And here I was, caught in the center of a storm I'd never seen coming. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 60 years of struggling for every penny, my sudden wealth had nearly cost me my life. But it had also opened my eyes to the true nature of my daughter,
To the strength I still possessed.
to the hard truth that sometimes blood ties become nooses if you let them. As dawn began to break over the horizon, I made a silent vow. No more sacrifices. No more excuses. No more turning a blind eye to betrayal. The game had changed. And so had I. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from the hospital. Patricia Everton pronounced dead at 5:17 a.m. Suspected antifreeze poisoning. Police requesting all party attendees remain available for questioning. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as their implications became clear. This wasn't just attempted murder anymore. It was actual murder. And my daughter was responsible. The morning newspapers didn't mince words. "Lottery winner's celebration ends in tragedy," screamed the headlines. The photo below showed paramedics wheeling Patricia's stretcher through the Grand Plaza's ornate lobby, with Lottie clutching dramatically at the gurney, her red dress a splash of blood against the hotel's cream marble. I stared at the image over my untouched coffee in Jason's hotel room, wondering when exactly my life had transformed into this grotesque theater. "You haven't eaten anything," Jason observed, setting down his phone. He'd been fielding calls since dawn from the police, from reporters, from concerned friends. "Not hungry," I replied, pushing away the room service tray. "Has Lottie called you?" "3 times. I let it go to voicemail. His expression hardened. "She's giving interviews, Mom. Playing the grieving daughter. There's a video online of her outside the hospital, talking about how devastated she is, how much she loved Patricia, and not a word about how that poison was meant for me." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "The police want to interview us again this afternoon. Separately this time." I nodded, unsurprised. They suspect foul play. They know it was foul play. Antifreeze doesn't find its way into wine by accident. Jason hesitated. "I think you should tell them your suspicions about Lottie." My stomach clenched. Despite everything, despite the evidence staring me in the face, some primal maternal instinct still rebelled against the thought of sending my own child to prison. Without proof, it's just my word against hers. Sometimes that's enough to start an investigation. Besides, they'll figure it out eventually. The poison came from your garage. The wine was specifically handed to you. She's the one who organized everything. She's also the one who appears most devastated by Patricia's death, I countered. The grieving daughter whose mother was tragically poisoned at a family celebration. Who would believe she did it herself? Jason's expression softened. "You're protecting her. Even now." "I'm being realistic," I insisted, though we both knew there was truth to his words. "Lottie is many things, but she's not stupid. She'll have covered her tracks." My phone buzzed, another text from Lottie. "Mother, please call me. The police are asking questions. We need to get our story straight. I'm worried about you." Get our stories straight. As if we were co-conspirators. As if there was some innocent explanation for what had happened. "What's our next move?" Jason asked, watching me set the phone aside without responding. "We follow the plan. I meet with my lawyer this morning. Change my will. Set up the trusts. Cut Lottie out completely. She'll contest it. Let her try," I said with more confidence than I felt. "The money is mine to distribute as I see fit. And after that?" I stood, suddenly needing to move, to act. "After that, we start digging. If Lottie planned this once, there might be evidence. People she talked to. Research she did online. Purchases of antifreeze. Something that proves what she tried to do." Jason nodded, a grim smile crossing his face. "Now you're thinking like someone who wants to survive." Howard Fielding had been my attorney since my divorce, 20 years earlier. He'd fought Derek and Patricia's custody grab for a fraction of his usual fee, recognizing that I could barely afford groceries, let alone legal representation. He was in his 70s now, with a stooped posture and rheumy eyes, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "This is troubling, Margaret," he said after I'd explained the situation, carefully omitting my suspicions about Lottie. Even now, I couldn't bring myself to openly accuse her, not without proof. "You want to completely disinherit your daughter?" "I want to protect my assets," I corrected, sitting stiffly in his wood-paneled office. "Create a structure that ensures my money goes where I want it to go, regardless of what happens to me." Howard removed his glasses, polishing them with a handkerchief, a habit I recognized as his thinking gesture. "You're talking about more than a simple will revision. You're talking about an irrevocable trust. Once it's established, even you won't be able to change it." "That's exactly what I want." May I ask why? After all these years of struggling, don't you want to enjoy your winnings? Travel? Buy a new home? Live a little? I smiled thinly. Believe me, Howard, I intend to live. That's precisely the point. Something in my tone must have alerted him. He leaned forward, lowering his voice though we were alone in his office. Margaret, are you in some kind of danger? Let's just say I've discovered that sudden wealth attracts all sorts of predators, even those you'd least expect. He nodded slowly. I understand. We can set up the trust today, but I have to warn you, it will cause quite a stir in your family. My family consists of Jason and myself at this point, I replied. Everyone else has shown their true colors. 2 hours later, I signed the final document with a sense of grim satisfaction. The Margaret Wilson Charitable Trust was now the owner of $95 million of my lottery winnings. As Howard had explained, I would retain $5 million for my personal use, more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, while the trust would fund programs for elderly care, children's education, and healthcare initiatives. Jason would serve as trustee alongside a professional management company. Lottie was explicitly excluded from any benefit, direct or indirect. It's done, Howard said, applying his notary seal to the document. Even if something happens to you, the money is protected. Thank you, Howard. I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a heavy burden. Just one more thing. He pulled another document from his drawer. Given circumstances, I've taken the liberty of drafting a power of attorney for healthcare and financial decisions. In the event you become incapacitated, this would prevent anyone from making decisions on your behalf without prior authorization. I understood his meaning immediately. Without this document, Lottie might still find a way to gain control if I were hospitalized or declared incompetent. Jason will have my power of attorney, I said firmly, signing where indicated. As I left Howard's office, I felt the first stirrings of something like hope. I hadn't realized until that moment how much the money had become a curse, not because of its existence, but because of the target it had painted on my back. Now, at least, I'd removed the financial incentive for my murder, but I'd also ensured Lottie's fury, and something told me that her rage might be even more dangerous than her greed. I was halfway to the police station for my interview when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Wilson? This is Detective Ramirez. I was hoping to catch you before our meeting. Is something wrong? I asked, a flutter of anxiety rising in my chest. Not wrong, exactly, but there's been a development I thought you should know about.
He paused.
The toxicology report confirmed ethylene glycol poisoning, antifreeze, as we suspected, but it also found traces of a prescription sedative in Ms. Everton's system, diazepam. I frowned. I don't understand. Why would there be a sedative? That's what we're trying to determine. Did Ms. Everton take anti-anxiety medication that you know of? I wouldn't know. We weren't close. The concentration suggests it was administered shortly before the antifreeze. It would have made her drowsy, less likely to notice the taste of the poison in her wine. A chill ran through me. This wasn't a spontaneous act of violence. It was premeditated, carefully planned. One more thing, the detective continued. We found a partial fingerprint on a fragment of the wine glass. We're running it now. Hope surged through me. That could identify who handled the glass last. Possibly. Though many people might have touched it. Waitstaff, bartenders. Still, it's something. His tone shifted slightly. Mrs. Wilson, when we meet, I'd like to discuss your relationship with your daughter in more detail. My grip tightened on the phone. My relationship with Lottie? Why? Standard procedure. We're interviewing everyone close to the victim. And to you. To me? I'm not the victim. There was a telling silence before he responded. Let's talk when you get here. The call ended, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. The police were connecting dots I hadn't explicitly drawn for them. They were looking at me as a potential target, not just a witness. And they were looking at Lottie. The interview room at the police station was nothing like the cozy spaces shown on television crime shows. It was stark, utilitarian, with uncomfortable metal chairs and a table bolted to the floor. A camera blinked in the corner, recording everything. Detective Ramirez sat across from me, a folder open before him. A female officer, whose name I'd already forgotten, stood silently in the corner. "Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Wilson," Ramirez began. "I know this is a difficult time. I want to help however I can," I replied, folding my hands on the table to stop them from trembling. "Let's start with your relationship with Patricia Everton." I took a deep breath. Patricia was my ex-husband's second wife. They got together while he and I were still married. The divorce was unpleasant. Unpleasant how? Derek, my ex-husband, and Patricia sued for custody of our daughter. They claimed I was an unfit mother because I worked too many hours trying to keep a roof over our heads. The bitterness crept into my voice despite my efforts to remain neutral. They lost, but the legal fees nearly bankrupted me. Ramirez made a note. "So there was animosity between you and Ms. Everton." "There was," I admitted. "But that was 20 years ago. I hadn't seen her since the custody hearing until she showed up at my party." "A party you didn't invite her to?"
No.
"My daughter did, without telling me." He looked up from his notes. "Your daughter Lottie remained close to Ms. Everton over the years?" "Apparently so. Lottie always idolized Patricia. Thought she was glamorous, sophisticated. Everything I wasn't. Yet Patricia came to your lottery celebration. Not Lottie's home, not a neutral location. Your celebration." I shrugged. "You have to ask Lottie about that." "We did." His expression revealed nothing. "She said she wanted to heal old wounds between you and Patricia. That she thought it was time to put the past behind you." The words were so patently absurd that I nearly laughed. Lottie had never once, in 20 years, expressed any interest in healing the rift between Patricia and me. Quite the opposite. She had delighted in comparing us, always finding me lacking. "Mrs. Wilson," Ramirez continued, "can you think of anyone who might have wanted to harm Ms. Everton?" I hesitated. This was my opening, my chance to point the finger directly at Lottie. But without proof, it would seem like the bitter accusation of a jealous mother. "I'm the wrong person to ask," I said carefully. As I mentioned, I hadn't seen Patricia in decades. I don't know anything about her life, her relationships, her enemies. "What about someone who might have wanted to harm you?" The question hung in the air between us. His eyes were steady on mine, evaluating, assessing. "Me?" I echoed, buying time. "The wine was handed to you first. You said yourself you noticed a strange odor and decided not to drink it. Isn't it possible that you were the intended target, not Ms. Everton?" And there it was, the theory I'd been turning over in my mind since the moment Patricia collapsed. Laid bare in this sterile room, spoken aloud by a man who investigated murders for a living. "I suppose it's possible," I allowed. "But who would want to harm a 60-year-old former grocery cashier?" He closed his folder, leaning forward slightly. "A 60-year-old former grocery cashier who just won $100 million might have a target on her back. You think someone poisoned the wine to get my money? But I haven't even officially received it yet. The trust isn't established. There's no will." "About that," he said, pulling a document from the folder. "Our financial crimes unit has been doing some background checking. It seems your son-in-law Richard has significant debts. Gambling, primarily. He's leveraged to the hilt, facing multiple collection actions. And your daughter recently took out a second mortgage on their home." This was news to me. Lottie and Richard had always projected an image of success, the nice house, the private schools for the twins, the luxury cars. But underneath, they'd been drowning. "I didn't know," I said honestly. "There's more." He slid another paper across the table. "Your daughter attempted to take out a life insurance policy on you 3 days after your lottery win was announced. $5 million. She was denied because you didn't consent to the medical exam." The room seemed to tilt around me. "That's impossible. I never heard anything about a life insurance policy." "We have the application, with your forged signature." My hands were no longer merely trembling. They were shaking outright. I clasped them together tightly, trying to process this new information. Lottie had not only planned to kill me, she tried to profit even further from my death. "Mrs. Wilson," Ramirez said gently, Is there something you want to tell me about your daughter? I looked up at him, at the compassion in his weathered face, and suddenly found myself unable to maintain the pretense. The wine was meant for me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lottie gave it to me. She watched me as I raised it to my lips. When I hesitated, when I set it down and gave it to Patricia instead, I saw the panic in her eyes, the calculation. And later, at the hospital, she let it slip. She said it would have been even longer if you drunk that wine. He nodded, unsurprised. Why do you think she did it? The money. It has to be. She's always felt entitled to more than I could give her. Now that I have it, she doesn't want to wait for her inheritance. Have you confronted her?
No.
I've been avoiding her calls. I changed my will this morning. She's been completely cut out. The bulk of my winnings are now in an irrevocable charitable trust. For the first time, Ramirez looked genuinely surprised. You moved quickly. I've spent 60 years being underestimated, detective. I don't intend to die because I was too slow to recognize the threat my own daughter poses. He gathered his papers, a grim satisfaction in his expression. We'll be watching her closely, Mrs. Wilson. The fingerprint analysis should be back tomorrow. In the meantime, I'd suggest staying somewhere secure. Not your home, not with friends she knows about. I'm ahead of you there, I assured him. I've already arranged alternative accommodations. As I stood to leave, he added, one more thing. We found a bottle of diazepam prescribed to Charlotte Harrington, your daughter, in her purse when we interviewed her. She claimed it was for anxiety, said she's been taking it for years. And the prescription was filled yesterday, after Patricia Everton died. The safe house Jason had arranged was a small lakeside cabin about an hour outside the city. It belonged to a friend of his who used it primarily for fishing trips, rustic but comfortable, with spotty cell service and no internet. Most importantly, only Jason knew I was there. I sat on the small porch as evening fell, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, a loon called mournfully to its mate. The peaceful scene was at complete odds with the turmoil inside me. My phone had limited reception, but texts occasionally came through. Lottie had sent 17 since morning, each more desperate than the last. Mother, where are you? We need to talk. The police are asking strange questions.
Call me immediately.
I know you're avoiding me. This is childish and dangerous. Richard says you've been to see Howard Fielding. What are you planning? If you're listening to Jason instead of me, you're making a terrible mistake. Answer me.
Fine.
Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when this all blows up in your face. The final message had come through just before I'd driven out of cell range. I've always protected you, even when you didn't deserve it. Don't make me your enemy. The threat was thinly veiled, but unmistakable. My daughter, the little girl I'd once rocked to sleep, whose tears I'd wiped away, whose dreams I'd nurtured despite our limited means, was now openly warning me of consequences if I didn't bend to her will. The cabin door creaked open behind me. Jason stepped out, 2 mugs of tea in his hands. Any word from Detective Ramirez? He asked, handing me a steaming mug. Not since this afternoon. The fingerprint analysis should be back tomorrow. I took a sip, the warmth spreading through my chest. Did you reach the bank? All set. Your accounts have been flagged for unusual activity. Any withdrawals over $1,000 will trigger an alert. And I've arranged for private security at your apartment building, just in case Lottie shows up. I nodded, grateful for his efficiency. The trust paperwork should be filed by now. The money is officially out of my hands and out of Lottie's reach. That might push her over the edge when she finds out. She already knows something's happened. Her last text mentioned Howard. Jason's expression darkened. Richard must be watching Howard's office. I should have considered that. It doesn't matter. What's done is done. I set my mug down, turning to face my son directly. Jason, there's something I need you to know. Something I've never told anyone. He sat beside me, concern etching his features. What is it, Mom? It's about Lottie. About why she is the way she is. I took a deep breath, the words difficult after so many years of silence. Lottie isn't Derek's biological daughter. Jason stared at me, shock evident in his expression.
What?
But everyone always said she looks just like Dad's mother. A coincidence. Or maybe our minds see connections when we want them to exist. I looked out over the lake, the memories washing over me. It was before you were born. Derek and I were going through a rough patch. He'd lost his job, was drinking too much. We fought constantly. One night, after a particularly bad argument, I went to a bar alone, just to get away, to breathe. Mom, you don't have to. I do. You need to understand. I squared my shoulders. I met a man there.
James.
He was kind, attentive, everything Derek wasn't at that time. It was just one night. A terrible mistake. When I discovered I was pregnant, Derek and I had reconciled. He never questioned that the baby was his. And I convinced myself it was better that way. Jason was silent for a long moment, processing this revelation. Does Lottie know?
No.
At least, I never told her. But sometimes I wonder if she sensed it somehow. If that's why she always seemed to resent me, to feel disconnected from our family. That's no excuse for what she's done, Jason said firmly. Plenty of people have complicated family dynamics without resorting to murder. I know. I'm not making excuses for her. I'm trying to understand her. I wiped away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. All these years, I've carried this secret, this guilt. I thought if I just loved her enough, sacrificed enough, it would make up for the lie at the foundation of her life. And now I wonder if I created the very monster that's trying to destroy me. Jason took my hands in his. Listen to me. Whatever mistakes you made, whatever secrets you kept, none of that justifies what Lottie has done.
She made her choices, Mom.
As an adult, with full awareness of the consequences. I nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. Thank you for not judging me. I'm your son. That's not going to change because of something that happened before I was even born. He squeezed my hands gently, but I have to ask, why tell me this now? Because if something happens to me, I want someone to know the truth. And because I hesitated, the thought that had been forming in my mind still nebulous, dangerous. Because I'm starting to think this might be the key to stopping her. Morning brought rain, a steady drumming on the cabin's metal roof. I'd slept fitfully, haunted by dreams of Lottie as a child, reaching for me with poisoned hands. Jason had gone into town for supplies and to check messages, where the cell reception was stronger. I sat at the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to formulate a plan. The sound of tires on gravel jolted me from my thoughts. Jason wasn't due back for at least an hour. Heart pounding, I moved to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain. A police cruiser sat in the drive, Detective Ramirez emerging from the driver's side. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by concern.
How had he found me?
I opened the door before he could knock. Detective, this is unexpected. His expression was grave. Mrs. Wilson, may I come in? I stepped aside, gesturing toward the kitchen table. Coffee? No, thank you. He remained standing, tension evident in his posture. I apologize for tracking you down like this. Your son provided the location when I explained the urgency. Has something happened? The fingerprint analysis came back. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. We found 3 clear prints on the wine glass fragments. Yours, Patricia Everton's, and a third set. My breath caught. Lottie's.
No.
Richard Harrington's. Your son-in-law. I sank into a chair, confusion washing over me. Richard? But that doesn't make sense. Lottie was the one who... Mrs. Wilson, Ramirez interrupted gently. We have reason to believe your daughter and son-in-law were working together. The financial investigation revealed that Richard took out a $3 million life insurance policy on Lottie 6 months ago. I don't understand. Why would he insure Lottie if they were planning to kill me? We believe they had a more complex plan. He sat across from me, his voice softening. Based on what we've uncovered, It appears Richard and Lottie intended to eliminate both you and Patricia Everton, then frame you posthumously for Patricia's murder. The pieces suddenly clicked into a horrible place. A murder-suicide? They wanted it to look like I poisoned Patricia, then killed myself out of guilt.
Exactly.
With you and Patricia both dead, Lottie would inherit your lottery winnings and collect on Richard's insurance policy on her. They'd be set for life, with no one the wiser about their involvement. The calculated cruelty of it staggered me. Not only had they planned to murder me, but to destroy my reputation, my legacy, in the process. There's more, Ramirez continued. We obtained a search warrant for their home this morning. We found research on their computer about undetectable poisons, information about your daily routine, and a draft of a suicide note, supposedly from you, confessing to Patricia's murder. My God, I whispered. My own daughter. Mrs. Wilson, Margaret, I need to ask you something important. He leaned forward. Has Lottie tried to contact you since yesterday? She's sent several texts. I haven't responded. When was the last one? I checked my phone. Last night, around 8. Why? His expression grew even more serious. We went to arrest Richard and Lottie this morning. Richard was there. Lottie wasn't. A chill ran through me. What did Richard say? He claims he hasn't seen her since yesterday afternoon. That they argued about something, and she left in a rage. He says he doesn't know where she went. You don't believe him.
No.
But he's not talking otherwise. His lawyer arrived before we could question him further. Ramirez stood, pacing the small kitchen. Margaret, we have reason to believe Lottie may be coming after you. With the trust established and her inheritance cut off, with the investigation closing in, she's desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a new text. From Lottie. I know where you are. We need to talk. Alone. One last chance to fix this. I showed the message to Ramirez, whose expression hardened. She's bluffing, he said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. She can't know where you are. Only your son, and I know that. And whoever Jason might have told, I added. Or whoever might have followed you here. The detective moved to the window, scanning the surrounding woods. I came alone, and I was careful. But you're right, we should assume this location is compromised.
He pulled out his radio.
I'll call for backup. As he stepped outside to make the call, I sat frozen, staring at Lottie's message. After everything, the poison, the betrayal, the elaborate plot to destroy me, she still believed there was something to fix. As if our relationship could be mended after she'd tried to murder me. Ramirez returned, his expression grim. Backup is on the way, but it'll take at least 30 minutes. I'm going to check the perimeter. Should I call Jason? Warn him. Yes, but tell him not to come back here. Have him meet the backup units at the main road.
He drew his weapon.
Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or the officers when they arrive. As he slipped out into the rain, I tried calling Jason. The call failed, no service. Text messages weren't going through either. We were truly isolated. I moved through the cabin, checking that all windows were locked, drawing curtains closed. My heart pounded painfully in my chest, every creak of the old building setting my nerves on edge. Was Lottie really out there, watching? Had she followed Ramirez? Or was it just another of her manipulations, designed to frighten me into responding? A sudden crash from the back of the cabin answered my question. The sound of breaking glass, followed by footsteps. She was inside. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and backed toward the front door. If I could just get outside, find Ramirez. Hello, Mother. Lottie stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the small living room. She was soaked from the rain, her blonde hair plastered to her skull, her expensive clothing muddied and torn. But it was her eyes that truly frightened me. Wild, desperate, with a feverish gleam that spoke of a mind unhinged. Lottie. I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. Detective Ramirez is outside. The police are on their way. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Of course they are. Jason always was good at running to the authorities. Such a perfect son. Such a disappointment as a brother. This isn't about Jason. It's about what you've done. What I've done. She took a step forward, and I tightened my grip on the knife. What about what you've done? 20 years of favoring him over me. 20 years of withholding love unless I performed exactly as expected. And now, cutting me out of what should rightfully be mine. The money was never yours, Lottie. It was mine. Won by me, meant for me. After everything I've endured, the humiliation of growing up poor, the second-hand clothes, the struggle for every opportunity, I deserved compensation. So, you decided to kill me for it? I couldn't keep the pain from my voice. Your own mother? Something flickered in her eyes. Not remorse, exactly, but perhaps recognition of how far she'd fallen. It wasn't personal, she said, as if that somehow made it better. Your old mother. You've lived your life. That money would have been wasted on you. With me, it could have done something meaningful. Like pay off Richard's gambling debts? Like fund your unsustainable lifestyle? Her expression darkened. You don't know anything about my life, my struggles. I know about the second mortgage, the collection actions against Richard, the life insurance policy you tried to take out on me. I took a deep breath. And I know about the policy Richard took out on you. That stopped her cold. What are you talking about? $3 million, Lottie. That's what your husband thinks you're worth. Did you know he was planning to kill you too, once I was out of the way? You're lying, she spat, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Detective Ramirez told me everything. They found the research on your computer, the poison information, the fake suicide note. They arrested Richard this morning. She paled visibly. Richard is arrested? For conspiracy to commit murder. Your prints weren't on the wine glass, Lottie. His were. That's impossible, she whispered. He never touched the glass. He handed it to me, and I gave it to you. It was the confession I'd been waiting for, spoken aloud at last. My daughter had admitted to attempting to poison me. The police know everything, Lottie. It's over. The best thing you can do now is surrender peacefully. She shook her head, a strange calm settling over her features. It's not over. Not yet. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small vial. Do you know what this is? I recognized it immediately. The same antifreeze that had killed Patricia, now condensed into a portable form. Don't do this, Lottie. Please. I tried to make it painless for you, she said, her voice eerily detached. The diazepam would have made you drowsy. You wouldn't have felt much. It would have been a kindness. Killing your mother is never a kindness. My mother. She gave a hollow laugh. That's rich, coming from you. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. What does that mean? Did you really think I didn't know? That I would never find out? Her eyes blazed with a lifetime of accumulated rage. I found the letters, Mother. The ones you kept hidden in that old jewelry box. The ones from my real father. The world seemed to stop. Those letters from James, written in the months after our brief encounter, before I'd cut off all contact, had been hidden away for decades. I'd nearly forgotten their existence. When I whispered, I was 13, looking for cash to go to the mall with friends. Instead, I found the truth about why you always looked at me differently than you looked at Jason. Why I never quite fit. Why Dad left us. Derek didn't know. Of course he knew, she shouted. Why else would he have abandoned me? His precious little girl who suddenly wasn't his at all. The pain in her voice was so raw, so genuine, that for a moment I saw past the monster she'd become to the wounded child beneath. Lottie, I'm so sorry. I should have told you, but it doesn't change the fact that I raised you, loved you. Loved me? She was trembling now, the vial clutched tightly in her hand. If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied to me my entire life. You wouldn't have favored Jason. You wouldn't have made me feel like an outsider in my own family. That was never my intention. Intentions don't matter. She took another step forward. Results matter. And the result is that I grew up feeling like something was wrong with me. Like I was defective. Unlovable. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the rainwater still dripping from her hair. For a moment, just a moment, I saw my little girl again, hurt and confused, needing reassurance. Lottie, please. Put down the poison.
We can talk about this.
We can heal. She shook her head, a bitter smile twisting her lips. It's too late for that. Richard has betrayed me. The police are closing in. My life as I knew it is over. She uncapped the vial. But I'm not going down alone. Lottie, no. It's fitting, don't you think? The secret that destroyed our family will destroy what's left of it. Poetic justice. She raised the vial to her lips. Police. Drop it now. Detective Ramirez burst through the front door, weapon drawn. In the same instant, the back door crashed open, uniformed officers pouring in with guns raised. Lottie froze, the vial an inch from her mouth, her eyes wild with panic and rage. It's over, Charlotte, Ramirez said, his voice calm but firm. Put down the poison. Don't make this worse than it already is. For one terrible moment, I thought she might still drink it, might choose death over facing the consequences of her actions. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options. Then, with a sound of pure anguish, she hurled the vial against the wall. It shattered, the liquid splashing harmlessly onto the wood. You win, Mother, she spat as the officers moved in, securing her hands behind her back. You always do. As they led her away, her final words cut deeper than any knife could have. I hope the money keeps you warm at night. It's all you have left now. The cabin door closed behind them. In the sudden silence, I sank to the floor, the knife clattering beside me. Detective Ramirez knelt down, his face etched with concern. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. It's over, he said gently. She can't hurt you anymore. But as I watched through the window, as they placed my daughter in the back of a police car, as the rain continued to fall in a world suddenly emptied of certainty, I knew he was wrong. Some wounds never heal. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some poisons have no antidote. My daughter had tried to murder me for money, and in saving my life, I'd lost the last remnant of my family. The last piece of the woman I'd once been, a mother, flawed but loving, trying her best in an unforgiving world. The lottery had given me $100 million. But the true cost of that fortune was only now becoming clear. And the price was higher than I'd ever imagined. The county courthouse stood like a fortress of justice, all granite columns and imposing steps designed to make ordinary people feel small. I'd been inside only once before, during my divorce from Derek. I remembered the feeling of insignificance, of being just another sad case in an endless parade of human misery. But today was different. Today, I wasn't the one on trial. Are you ready for this? Jason asked, adjusting his tie as we stood at the base of the steps. 2 weeks had passed since Lottie's arrest. 2 weeks of headlines, of reporters camping outside my apartment, of neighbors crossing the street to avoid awkward conversations. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, smoothing down the simple navy blue dress I'd chosen for the arraignment.
No designer labels, no flashy jewelry.
Nothing that would feed the lottery winner murder plot narrative the media had been feasting on. Remember what Mr. Lowell said, Jason cautioned, referring to the district attorney who'd been preparing us for this moment. Don't engage with the press. Don't look at Lottie or Richard. And try to keep your emotions in check. I nodded, though the last instruction seemed nearly impossible. How does a mother remain emotionless while watching her child being charged with attempted murder? Margaret. The voice cut through the morning air like a blade. I turned to see Patricia's sister, Eleanor, striding toward us. We'd met briefly at the hospital the night Patricia died, a blur of introductions in the midst of chaos. Eleanor, I acknowledged, bracing myself. In the tabloid coverage, Patricia's family had been portrayed as collateral damage in a twisted family feud. I wanted to speak with you before we go in, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. To see the woman whose family destroyed mine. Jason stepped slightly in front of me, protective. Mrs. Wilson is a victim here, not a perpetrator. Eleanor's eyes flashed. Is she? A mother raises a monster, and we're supposed to believe she had no part in creating it. The accusation stung, not least because I'd been torturing myself with the same question for weeks. Where had I gone wrong with Lottie? What signs had I missed? What kind of mother raises a child capable of murder? I'm deeply sorry for your loss, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Patricia didn't deserve what happened to her. No one does. Sorry doesn't bring my sister back, Eleanor snapped. Sorry doesn't erase the image of her dying in agony while your daughter watched. My client has nothing further to say, came a crisp voice from behind me. Howard Fielding had arrived, briefcase in hand, his elderly frame somehow still commanding respect. Though not directly involved in the criminal case, he'd appointed himself my unofficial protector in all legal matters. Eleanor glared at him, then back at me. This isn't over, she promised, before turning and marching up the courthouse steps. Charming woman, Howard remarked dryly. I assume she's planning a civil suit? Wouldn't you in her position? I sighed. Her sister is dead because of my family. Her sister is dead because of your daughter and son-in-law's actions, he corrected firmly. Not yours. Remember that distinction. The DA certainly will. We made our way through the gauntlet of reporters, their questions hitting like physical blows. Mrs. Wilson, did you suspect your daughter was trying to kill you? How does it feel to know your own child wanted you dead? Will you be testifying against Charlotte and Richard? Is it true you've disinherited your daughter? Jason kept his arm around my shoulders, guiding me forward while Howard blocked the more aggressive journalists with his substantial presence. By the time we reached the courtroom, I was trembling, though whether from anger or grief, I couldn't tell. Courtroom 3A was already packed. Journalists, curious public, legal teams. Detective Ramirez nodded to me from his position near the prosecution table. At the defense table sat two expensive-looking attorneys in sharp suits. And between them, separated by an empty chair, were Richard and Lottie. My first glimpse of my daughter since her arrest hit me like a physical blow. The fashionable clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a plain beige jumpsuit that hung loosely on her frame. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones more prominent than ever. Her hair, usually styled immaculately, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. But it was her expression that truly shook me. Where I'd expected to see rage, or perhaps calculated remorse for the benefit of the court, I saw nothing. Her face was utterly blank, her eyes focused on some middle distance, as if she'd retreated deep inside herself. Richard, by contrast, was all nervous energy. He kept leaning toward his attorney, whispering urgently, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal's. They're not sitting together, Jason observed quietly, but at the doorway, she paused, turned, and looked directly at me one last time. Her lips moved, forming words meant only for me to see. This isn't over. The twins are asking for their parents, Jason's wife Claire said quietly, setting a cup of tea in front of me. We were gathered in their Seattle home, a comfortable, modern space with views of Puget Sound. After the arraignment, Jason had insisted I stay with them rather than return to my apartment alone. What have you told them? I asked. Brandon and Bradley had been brought to Seattle by Richard's parents the day after the arrests. At 8 years old, they were too young to fully comprehend what was happening, but old enough to know something was terribly wrong. Claire, a child psychologist, had taken charge of explaining the situation in age-appropriate terms. Just that their mom and dad are in trouble with the law and have to stay away for a while. That they didn't make good choices, but that doesn't mean they don't love Brandon and Bradley. They've been surprisingly resilient, Jason added, joining us at the kitchen table. Though Bradley had a nightmare last night, kept saying the bad water was coming to get him. A chill ran through me. The bad water? Jason and Claire exchanged a look. We think he might have overheard something about the antifreeze, Claire explained. Kids pick up more than we realize. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, trying to ground myself. What's going to happen to them? Richard's parents are in their 70s. They can't raise two active boys long-term. That's actually something we wanted to discuss with you, Claire said, reaching for Jason's hand. We've been talking about applying for temporary guardianship with an eye toward adoption if Lottie and Richard are convicted. The offer stunned me. Jason and Claire had been trying for a baby for years without success. They discussed adoption but had never taken concrete steps. You take them? Both of them? Jason nodded. They're family, Mom. Regardless of what Lottie did, those boys are innocent. They deserve stability, love, a chance at a normal life. Tears welled in my eyes. In the midst of all this darkness, my son was still finding ways to be the good, compassionate man I'd raised. What can I do to help? I asked. Actually, Claire said, having your support would make a big difference to the family court. If you're willing to provide a statement, maybe even testify about your relationship with the boys. Of course, I agreed immediately. Anything. There's something else, Jason said, his expression turning serious. Richard's parents called this morning. They've been served with a lawsuit. Let me guess, Eleanor?
Yes.
She's suing Richard and Lottie, of course, but also their parents as custodians of the twins' trust funds. She's claiming the boys are benefiting from Patricia's murder through their inheritance from you. The vindictiveness took my breath away. The boys had nothing to do with any of this. We know that. But Eleanor is grieving and angry. She's lashing out at anyone connected to what happened to Patricia. What does she want? Everything, Jason said grimly. She's asking for punitive damages, emotional distress, loss of companionship, the works. If she wins, it could wipe out the trusts I set up for the boys. I thought of Brandon and Bradley, already traumatized by their parents' arrests, now potentially facing financial ruin as well. It was too much. She won't win, I said firmly. I won't let her. Mom, this isn't your battle. Yes, it is. I stood, a new determination flowing through me. Those boys are my grandsons. My family. Whatever Lottie and Richard did, the twins don't deserve to suffer for it. And I'm not going to sit back and watch another greedy vulture try to pick apart what's left of my family for a payday. Claire looked concerned. Margaret, you've already been through so much. No one would blame you for stepping back from this. I would blame me, I replied. All my life, I've let others control the narrative. I've been the victim, the abandoned wife, the struggling single mother, the lucky lottery winner. Well, not anymore. From now on, I decide who I am and what happens to my family. Jason studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll call Howard. Howard Fielding's office had become something of a war room over the following days. Maps and documents covered the conference table, sticky notes dotted the walls, and a whiteboard listed action items in Howard's precise handwriting. Eleanor Vance isn't just angry. She's strategic, Howard explained, tapping a document. She filed the civil suit simultaneously with similar actions against the catering company that served the wine, the security firm that worked the event, and even the manufacturer of the wine glass, claiming negligence all around. She's casting a wide net, observed Sylvia Chin, the razor-sharp litigator Howard had brought in to handle the civil case, hoping one of the defendants will settle quickly to avoid bad publicity. I studied the papers spread before us. What's our countermove? Ordinarily, I'd suggest waiting it out, Howard said. Civil cases move slowly, and, with the criminal trial pending, there's a good chance this would be stayed until after that concludes. But, I prompted, sensing his hesitation. But Eleanor has filed for an emergency injunction to freeze all assets connected to the twins' trust funds pending the outcome of the case. If granted, that would mean they couldn't access their education funds, healthcare expenses, nothing. The cruelty of it stunned me. She's going after children to get to me. Sylvia nodded grimly. The hearing is set for next week. We need to be prepared. What are our options? Jason asked. He'd flown in from Seattle specifically for this meeting, leaving Claire with the twins. Howard spread his hands. We fight the injunction, of course. But these cases can drag on for years, especially with the parallel criminal proceedings. Or, I pressed, knowing there was more. Or we consider a settlement, Sylvia said bluntly. Pay Eleanor to go away. Out of the question, I snapped. I won't reward her for targeting innocent children. There is a third option, Howard said quietly, but it's unorthodox. Something in his tone made me lean forward.
I'm listening.
We go on the offensive. Instead of just defending against Eleanor's suit, we file our own. Against Lottie and Richard. The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. Sue my own daughter? For fraud, conspiracy, emotional distress, and attempted murder, he confirmed. Then we petition the court to place any damages awarded into a special trust for the twins, one specifically structured to be protected from third-party claims like Eleanor's. You want me to publicly sue my own child to protect my grandchildren from her victim's sister? The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, if it weren't so tragic. It's aggressive, Sylvia acknowledged, but it sends a clear message. You aren't protecting Lottie or benefiting from her actions. You're holding her accountable while ensuring the innocent parties, the twins, are cared for. Plus, Howard added, it would likely force a consolidation of all the civil actions, giving us more control over the timing and strategy. I turned to Jason, seeking his reaction. His expression was troubled but resolute. It makes legal sense, he said slowly. But Mom, are you prepared for what this means? Publicly opposing Lottie in both criminal and civil court? The media will have a field day. The media already has a field day every time I step outside, I pointed out. At least this way, we're controlling the narrative. Howard raised an eyebrow. So, you want to proceed? I took a deep breath, imagining the headlines, the whispers, the knowing looks. The daughter who tried to kill her mother for money, now being sued by that same mother. It was tabloid gold. But I thought of Brandon and Bradley, innocent children caught in a web of adult greed and betrayal. They deserve protection, regardless of the cost to my privacy or peace of mind. Do it, I said firmly. File the lawsuit. But make it clear in every document, every statement, every filing that this is about protecting the twins, not punishing Lottie. Howard nodded, making notes. We'll draft the complaint immediately. There's one more thing you should know, though. What now? I sighed, feeling the weight of each new complication. Richard's attorney has been in touch. It seems his client is ready to accept a plea deal. He'll testify that Lottie was the mastermind behind everything, the poison plot, the insurance fraud, all of it, in exchange for a reduced sentence. And the prosecutor is accepting this? Jason asked incredulously. They want Lottie, Howard explained. She's the one who actually administered the poison. Richard is just the supporting player in their view. The betrayal was so perfectly in character for Richard that I wasn't even surprised. Always looking out for himself, always finding the angle that would cause him the least inconvenience. What does this mean for the twins? I asked, focusing on what mattered most. It means Richard might serve as little as 7 years, Sylvia said. He could still be part of their lives while they're teenagers. And Lottie. Howard's expression was grave. If convicted on all counts with Richard's testimony against her, 25 to life. She'd be eligible for parole in her 60s. The same age I was now. The thought of my daughter spending the rest of her vital years behind bars should have devastated me. Instead, I felt a strange numbness, as if I were observing someone else's tragedy from a safe distance. I need to see her, I said suddenly. Jason straightened in alarm. Lottie? Why? Because despite everything, she's still my daughter. And because I need to look her in the eye and tell her what's happening with her children. She deserves to hear it from me, not from news reports or prison gossip. Margaret, Howard began cautiously, that might not be advisable from a legal standpoint. Anything you say could be. I'm not asking for permission, Howard. I interrupted. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Arrange the visit. The county detention center was a study in institutional despair. Cinderblock walls painted an aggressive shade of beige. Fluorescent lights that buzzed incessantly. The mingled smells of industrial cleaner and human misery. I sat in the visitation room, separated from my daughter by a thick pane of plexiglass, a telephone receiver clutched in my hand. We'd been staring at each other for nearly a minute, neither speaking first. Lottie looked even worse than she had at the arraignment. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her skin had the sallow tone that comes from weeks without sunlight. But it was the set of her mouth, a bitter line etched with contempt, that told me the most about her state of mind. "I'm surprised you came," she finally said, her voice scratchy from disuse. "I'm still your mother." She laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Are you?" Mothers don't testify against their children. Mothers don't file lawsuits to take away what little their children have left. So she'd heard about the civil suit. I shouldn't have been surprised. Legal documents were public record, and Lottie had always been well informed. "The lawsuit isn't about punishing you," I explained. "It's about protecting the twins from Eleanor Vance. She's trying to seize their trust funds." Something flickered in Lottie's eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her. Concern for her children. "Brandon and Bradley are with Jason and Claire," I continued. "They're safe, well cared for. Jason is applying for guardianship. My brother," she spat. "Taking my children? Would you prefer Richard's elderly parents? Or foster care? Those are the alternatives, Lottie." She fell silent, the calculation visible on her face as she processed the options. "Richard is taking a plea deal," I added. "He's going to testify against you." This didn't seem to surprise her. "Of course he is. Richard always was a coward." "Did you know about the life insurance policy he took out on you?" Her expression remained neutral, but I saw the slight tightening around her eyes. She hadn't known. $3 million, I pressed. "Taken out 6 months ago, right around when you started planning to kill me. What do you think would have happened to you once I was gone, and he had control of my money? Once you'd served your purpose?" "Shut up," she hissed, color finally rising in her pale cheeks. "You don't know anything about my marriage, my life. I know Richard was planning to eliminate you just like you were planning to eliminate me. I know your twins were going to end up orphans. I know your grand plan would have destroyed everything and everyone you claimed to care about." "Enough." She slammed her hand against the plexiglass, making me flinch. "You came here to gloat? To tell me my husband is betraying me, my brother is stealing my children, and you're taking what little financial security they have left?" Message received, mother. "You win. Again." I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady. "This isn't about winning, Lottie. It's about cleaning up the catastrophic mess you've created. It's about making sure your children have a future despite what you and Richard have done." She looked away, jaw clenched. "What happens to them if, when I'm convicted?" "Jason and Claire will adopt them, with my full support. They'll have stability, love, education. Everything they need. Except their mother. You forfeited that role when you decided murder was an acceptable solution to your financial problems," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "When you chose money over the well-being of your family." "Like you're any better," she shot back. "Filing lawsuits, cutting me out of your will, playing the victim for the cameras. You're loving this, aren't you? The attention, the sympathy. Poor Margaret, targeted by her evil daughter. It's the role you were born to play." Her words stung, but I refused to show it. "I didn't come here to argue, Lottie. I came to tell you about your children and to ask you a question." "What question?" I took a deep breath.
Why?
"Not why you tried to kill me. I understand greed. But why involve Patricia? Why frame me posthumously as her killer? Why not just make it look like an accident or natural causes?" Something shifted in her expression, a subtle change that sent a chill down my spine. For a moment, the mask slipped, revealing not the calculating sociopath I'd come to expect, but something infinitely more disturbing. Genuine emotion. "Because I wanted you to suffer," she said softly. "Even in death. I wanted your name dragged through the mud, your reputation destroyed. I wanted the world to remember you not as the lucky lottery winner, not as the hardworking single mother, but as a murderer. A jealous, bitter old woman who killed her ex-husband's wife in a fit of delayed revenge." The raw hatred in her voice left me speechless. "You took everything from me," she continued, her eyes boring into mine. "My father, twice. My chance at a better life. 20 years of wondering why I was never good enough, never worthy of the love you gave so easily to Jason. And then, when fate finally gave you the means to make it right, to lift us all up together. You hoarded it. Just like you hoarded the truth about who I really am. Lottie, I never meant. Save it. She cut me off. Your intentions don't matter. Only the results. And the result is me in here, my children with your precious son, and you still standing, still breathing, still benefiting from the chaos. She leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging the surface. You think this is over because I'm locked up? Because Richard betrayed me? You have no idea what's coming, Mother. No idea at all. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? Her smile was terrifying in its serenity. It means you should watch your back. Richard isn't the only one who knows how to make deals. Before I could respond, she stood abruptly.
Guard.
I'm done here. As they led her away, she glanced back one last time. Give my children a message from me. Mommy loves them. Mommy will see them again.
Soon.
It wasn't until I was in the car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, that the full impact of her words hit me. This wasn't just the empty threat of a desperate woman. There had been too much confidence in her tone, too much certainty. Lottie had something planned.
Or someone.
And whatever it was, whoever it was, I needed to find out before it was too late. She's bluffing, Detective Ramirez assured me, setting a cup of coffee on his cluttered desk. I'd gone directly from the detention center to the police station, my mind racing with possibilities, each more alarming than the last. Prisoners always make threats. It's one of the few forms of control they have left. You didn't see her face, I insisted. This wasn't just anger or defiance. She was confident, like she knew something I didn't. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. Mrs. Wilson, Margaret, I understand your concern. But Lottie is in a maximum security facility. Her communications are monitored. Her visitors are limited to attorneys and immediate family, which, at this point, is just you. There's no way she could orchestrate anything from in there. Unless she already had arrangements in place before her arrest, I pointed out. Or unless she has help from someone we haven't identified yet. Ramirez's expression shifted slightly, a policeman's tell that I'd hit on something he'd already considered. What aren't you telling me? I asked. He hesitated, then pushed a folder across the desk. We've been looking into Richard's gambling debts. They're significant, and not to the kind of people who write off losses. I opened the folder, scanning the contents. Bank statements, loan documents, and more ominously, transcripts of threatening voicemails from individuals with names like Marco and the Bishop. Organized crime? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Not on that level, but definitely the kind of local operators who don't take kindly to being stiffed on six-figure debts. He tapped the folder. Richard owes over $750,000 to some very unpleasant people. People who might be very interested in a wealthy mother-in-law who recently won the lottery. The implication was clear. You think Lottie made a deal with Richard's creditors? It's a theory we're exploring. Richard swears he kept his gambling separate from Lottie, that she didn't know the extent of his debts. But our financial forensics suggest otherwise. There were transfers from their joint accounts to known associates of these loan sharks, dating back months before your lottery win. I thought of Lottie's confidence at the detention center, her certainty that things weren't over. If she did make arrangements with these people, what would that look like? Ramirez's expression was grave. Best case? They pressure you for money, maybe through intimidation or threats against family members. Worst case. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I should warn Jason, I said, reaching for my phone. If they know about the twins. We've already placed a patrol near your son's home in Seattle, Ramirez assured me. And we can arrange protection for you as well. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with my decisiveness. No police escort, no obvious security. If someone is watching me, I don't want them to know we're onto them. He frowned. That's not advisable. Maybe not, but it's necessary if we want to draw them out. An idea was forming in my mind, dangerous, perhaps foolish, but somehow right. I'm tired of being reactive, detective. Always one step behind Lottie, always scrambling to protect myself after the fact. It's time I took control of this situation. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we set a trap. Using me as bait. His eyebrows shot up. Absolutely not. That's not how we operate. Then how do you suggest we proceed? Wait for them to make a move against my family? Against the twins? I won't live in fear, Detective. And I won't let what's left of my family live in fear either. Margaret. I've spent my entire life being underestimated. I interrupted. By my ex-husband, by Patricia, by Lottie. Even by myself. That ends now. I have resources now that I never had before. I have clarity I never had before. And I'm done being a victim. Ramirez studied me for a long moment, his expression a mixture of respect and concern. You're suggesting a police operation, using yourself as bait, to draw out potential hitmen hired by your incarcerated daughter. Do you realize how crazy that sounds? Crazier than a daughter trying to poison her mother for lottery winnings? Crazier than a husband planning to murder his wife once his mother-in-law was out of the way. I leaned forward. We've left crazy far behind, Detective. Now we're just trying to stay alive. He rubbed his face, clearly conflicted. Let me talk to my captain.
No promises.
That's all I ask. I stood to leave, then hesitated. One more thing. The letters Lottie mentioned, from her biological father. I kept them in an old jewelry box in my bedroom. When Lottie was arrested, did your team search my apartment? Of course. Standard procedure when investigating an attempted murder. We were looking for evidence related to the poisoning. And the jewelry box? The letters. He frowned, flipping through his notes. No jewelry box was cataloged in the evidence. But the search wasn't exhaustive. We were focused on areas where poison might have been stored or prepared. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Then they could still be there. In my apartment. Where anyone with a key could find them. Does it matter? Lottie already knows about her parentage. The letters don't just reveal that Derek wasn't her father. I explained, my voice tight. They contain information about who her real father is. His name, his last known location, details that could help her find him. And that's a problem because... I met his gaze steadily. Because James Wilson isn't just some man I had a brief affair with 25 years ago. He's a convicted felon who served time for assault and attempted murder. A man who threatened to destroy everything I loved if I ever revealed his paternity to anyone. Ramirez straightened, suddenly alert. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I thought the letters were safely hidden. Because I truly believed James was out of our lives forever. The last I heard, he was in prison again, serving a 15-year sentence. I swallowed hard. But that was 10 years ago. You think Lottie might try to contact him? To what end? I don't know. Revenge? A sense of connection to her real family? Or maybe, the thought chilled me to the bone. Maybe she already has. Maybe that's who she's been dealing with all along. The detective was already reaching for his phone. I need the full name, date of birth, last known location, and any other identifying information you have on James Wilson. As I provided the details, watching Ramirez's expression grow increasingly concerned, a terrible certainty settled over me. The nightmare wasn't ending. It was evolving. Lottie had tried to kill me with poison in my wine. She had failed. But there were other ways to destroy a person. And if James Wilson was involved, if father and daughter had connected, united by a shared capacity for violence and a twisted sense of grievance, then the real danger was just beginning. I need to get to my apartment, I said urgently.
Now.
Before anyone else does. I'll send officers.
No.
I'll go myself. If the letters are still there, I need to be the one to find them. I met his gaze steadily. And if someone else is already looking for them, better me than an unsuspecting patrol officer. That's exactly why you shouldn't go, he argued. If someone dangerous is there, then they'll find exactly what they expect, a frightened, vulnerable old woman. I smiled grimly. What they won't expect is that this old woman is done being a victim, done being a target. I won the lottery, Detective Ramirez. It's about time I started acting like it. As I left the police station, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The letters tell quite a story, Margaret. father and daughter have so much to discuss.
So many plans to make. You should join us sometime.
We're dying to see you. Attached was a photo of my bedroom, the open jewelry box on the bed, its contents scattered across the duvet. They had the letters. They were in my home, and they were waiting for me. I stared at the photo on my phone, ice spreading through my veins. My bedroom, my private sanctuary, violated. The jewelry box I'd kept hidden in the back of my closet for decades, now lying open on my bed, its secrets exposed. Mrs. Wilson? Detective Ramirez's voice seemed to come from far away. Margaret? What is it? Wordlessly, I handed him my phone. His expression hardened as he examined the image, then the unknown number. They're in your apartment right now, he said, already reaching for his radio. I'm calling for backup. No, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. No sirens, no patrol cars. That's exactly what they want, to create a scene, to control the situation. This isn't a negotiation. These people are dangerous. Of course they are, but they're also calculating. I took back my phone, studying the image more carefully. Look at how the photo is staged. The jewelry box deliberately opened, the letters spread out for maximum effect. This isn't just a break-in. It's a message. All the more reason to approach with caution. Which is exactly what I intend to do. I met his gaze evenly, but I'll do it my way. And what way is that, exactly? I took a deep breath. I'm going to walk into that apartment, face whoever is waiting for me, and end this. Today. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That is absolutely not happening. Detective Ramirez, Miguel, I said, using his first name for the first time. For weeks now, I've been reacting. To Lottie's betrayal. To Patricia's death. To threats and lawsuits and prison visits. I've been playing defense while they call the shots. Not anymore. This isn't a game, Margaret. No, it's my life. My family. My future. I straightened my shoulders. And I'm taking it back. His expression shifted from disbelief to reluctant respect. You're really going to do this, aren't you?
Yes.
But I'm not stupid. I managed a tight smile. I'd appreciate if you and a few of your colleagues were nearby. Not visible, but close enough to intervene if necessary. He considered this for a long moment, then nodded. I'll arrange it, but you'll wear a wire.
No wire y counter.
Just my phone, with an open line to you. Less chance of discovery.
Fine.
But at the first sign of danger, we're coming in.
No heroics.
Agreed. I gathered my purse, suddenly eager to move, to act. There's one more thing I need before we go. What's that? A detour to the bank. My apartment building looked exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks earlier. A modest complex for middle-income residents, nothing flashy or pretentious. The normalcy felt surreal given what awaited me inside. You sure about this? Jason asked from the driver's seat. After leaving the police station, I'd called him rather than taking a taxi. Some conversations needed family. As sure as I've been about anything. I squeezed his hand. Remember what we discussed. No matter what happens, stick to the plan. He nodded, though the worry lines around his eyes had deepened. Mom, be careful. Please. Always. I leaned over to kiss his cheek. I love you, son. I love you too. I exited the car, aware of Detective Ramirez and 2 plainclothes officers positioned strategically around the parking lot. To any observer, they would appear to be residents going about their business. Only I knew they were my backup, my safety net if things went wrong. My steps were steady as I crossed the lobby and entered the elevator. Inside, I opened my purse, checking that everything was in place. The bank envelope. The legal documents Howard had rushed to prepare. My phone, with the line to Ramirez already connected, muted but recording everything. The elevator doors opened on my floor. The hallway stretched before me, empty and silent. My apartment was the last one on the right, a corner unit I'd chosen years ago for its extra window and slightly larger living room. Standing before my door, I took a moment to center myself. Whatever, whoever, waited on the other side, I would face it head-on. No more running. No more hiding. No more being the victim. I inserted my key and turned the lock. The apartment was darker than it should have been at midday. The blinds had been drawn, casting the familiar space in shadow. But even in the dimness, I could make out a figure seated in my favorite armchair, a large silhouette that was distinctly male. "Hello, Margaret," came a voice I hadn't heard in 25 years. "You're looking well. Prosperity suits you." I flipped on the light switch, revealing the man who had haunted the edges of my consciousness for decades. James Wilson had aged, but not softened. His once black hair was now steel gray, cropped close to his skull. Deep lines carved pathways across his face, mapping a hard life lived without regret. He wore expensive clothes that couldn't quite disguise the brutality in his posture, the coiled violence that had both attracted and terrified me all those years ago. "James." I kept my voice neutral, betraying none of the churning emotions his presence evoked. "I'd say it's nice to see you, but we both know that would be a lie." He laughed, the same rich, dangerous sound that had once made my young heart race. "Always direct. I liked that about you. What I can't figure out," I continued, setting my purse on the side table without taking my eyes off him, "is how you found Lottie. Or should I say, how she found you." "Clever girl, our daughter," he said, emphasizing the R in a way that made my skin crawl. "Started looking for me about 2 years ago. Hired a private investigator. Found me 6 months back, just after I got out of Joliet. And what? You two bonded over your mutual disdain for me." His smile was wolfish. "Something like that." She had questions. I had answers. We had common interests. "Murder being one of them," I said flatly. He shrugged, unperturbed by the accusation. "I prefer to think of it as problem-solving. You were a problem for her. A barrier between her and financial security. And what am I to you, James? After all these years. Unfinished business." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, studying me with unsettling intensity. "You kept my daughter from me, Margaret. Let another man raise her. Denied me my rights." "Rights?" I couldn't contain my disbelief. "You were a convicted felon who threatened to kill me if I ever told anyone about the pregnancy. What rights are you referring to, exactly?" I was young, angry. I would have come around eventually. He waved a dismissive hand. "But you never gave me the chance. And now, here we are." "Yes, here we are. You breaking into my home, threatening me via text, presumably planning to what? Kill me? Extort money? Both." He smiled, appreciating my directness. "Let's start with the money. Lottie tells me you've won quite a windfall. $100 million. Had. I corrected. Most of it's gone now. Placed in an irrevocable charitable trust." A flicker of annoyance crossed his features. "So I've heard. Still, $5 million remains in your personal accounts. That's a good starting point." "A starting point for what?" "For making amends." He spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. "You owe me, Margaret. 25 years of fatherhood, stolen. A relationship with my only child, denied. That's a significant debt. And you think money will satisfy it? It's a start. $5 million now. Then you'll undo that trust, return the money to your control, and we'll discuss further compensation." I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly to glance outside. The street below appeared normal, residents coming and going, oblivious to the drama unfolding in apartment 3B. "And if I refuse?" His expression hardened. "Don't test me, Margaret. I spent 15 years in maximum security for what I did to the last person who crossed me. The difference is, this time I won't get caught." "Because Lottie's helping you," I surmised. "Planning your moves from her jail cell. Clever indeed. She's my daughter, all right. Has my brains, my determination." "Your capacity for cruelty," I added. He didn't deny it. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." I turned to face him fully. "Where is your accomplice?" His eyebrows rose. "Accomplice?" There were 2 wineglass sets at the celebration. 2 people working together to frame me for Patricia's murder. Lottie and Richard. But Richard's in custody. So, who helped you break in? Who took that photo? James smiled, slow and dangerous. You always were observant. Too observant for your own good. On cue, a door opened, and a young man stepped out of my bedroom. Tall, slender, with features that reminded me jarringly of Lottie. One of Richard's cousins, I realized. I'd met him briefly at the twins' birthday party last year. Mrs. Wilson, he acknowledged with a mocking nod. Bet you didn't expect the family reunion to get this complicated. Ryan, I said, recalling his name. I thought you were in graduate school in Colorado. I was, until Richard called, needing help with a family matter. He moved to stand beside James, the alliance between them clear. Turns out James here is practically family too, at least to Lottie. The pieces clicked into place. You've been working with Lottie all along, even before she found James. Ryan shrugged. Richard owed me money. A lot of money. Said he'd pay me back double if I helped with a little insurance fraud. Then things got complicated. Complicated, I repeated. Is that what you call murder these days? Collateral damage, James corrected. Patricia wasn't supposed to die. You were. Things went sideways. And now you're here to fix that mistake. I kept my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. To finish what Lottie started. Not necessarily. James stood, his height imposing in the small living room. Like I said, we can start with the money. $5 million.
Today.
Then we discuss next steps. I opened my purse, retrieving the bank envelope. I thought you might say that. So I came prepared. His eyes lit with avarice as I pulled out a cashier's check. Smart woman. Practical, I corrected. But before I hand this over, I want something in return. You're not really in a position to negotiate, Ryan pointed out, his hand moving suggestively toward his jacket pocket. Actually, I am. I held up the check so they could see the amount. $5 million made out to James Wilson. I have what you want, and you haven't killed me yet, which means you need something only I can provide. So yes, we're negotiating. James's expression was a mixture of amusement and respect. What do you want? The letters. All of them. And your written confession to conspiring with Lottie to murder me and frame me for Patricia's death. He laughed outright. You can't be serious. Completely. The confession is already drafted. I pulled out the document Howard had prepared. You just need to sign it. And why would I do that? Because I've added something to the trust documents. A provision that if I die under suspicious circumstances, or if I'm threatened or coerced, the $5 million I've kept out becomes part of the charitable trust as well. Automatically. Irrevocably. It was a bluff. No such provision existed. But James and Ryan had no way of knowing that. You expect me to sign a confession in exchange for money that will immediately be locked away if you die? James shook his head. You've gotten bolder, Margaret, but not smarter. The provision takes effect 30 days after any suspicious incident. I clarified, maintaining the lie, which gives you ample time to cash that check and disappear. By the time the police connect you to anything, you'll be long gone. With $5 million. I could see him considering it, calculating the odds, weighing risk against reward. And what do you get out of this arrangement? He asked. Peace, I said simply. An end to this nightmare. And insurance against any future attempts on my life. The confession would implicate Lottie, Ryan pointed out. Your own daughter. My daughter implicated herself when she tried to poison me, I replied, a steely edge entering my voice. When she conspired with her biological father to finish the job. James studied me for a long moment, then nodded. The letters for the check. But no confession. That's my counteroffer. Not good enough. It's the best you're going to get, Ryan interjected, his hand now visibly resting on what I assumed was a concealed weapon. Take it or things get unpleasant. I held my ground. The letters and a confession stating you broke in here today threatened me and demanded money. Nothing about the poisoning or Lottie, just today's events. James's eyes narrowed, sensing a trap, but unable to pinpoint it. Why would you want that? Because it gives me leverage against any future threats. It proves coercion if you try to come after me again for more money. He considered this, then nodded slowly. Show me the revised confession. I handed him the second document Howard had prepared, a simpler statement acknowledging the break-in and extortion attempt. Nothing that would help Lottie's case, but something that would establish James and Ryan as threats. You sign, I give you the check, and you leave, I stated. Never contact me again. Never come near my family. Define family, James said with a cruel smile. Because technically, Lottie is my family too. You know what I mean. Fine. He took the pen I offered, scrawled his signature on the document, then held out his hand for the check. Pleasure doing business with you, Margaret. I handed over the check, maintaining my composure even as his fingers brushed mine. The letters. Ryan moved to the bedroom, returning with a stack of yellowed envelopes.
Here.
Though I don't know why you want them. Ancient history now. Some history needs to be buried, I said, taking the letters. Permanently. We're done here. James folded the check and tucked it into his jacket pocket. You won't see me again, Margaret. But remember, if anything happens to that check, if it doesn't clear, I'll be back. And I won't be nearly as civilized. It will clear, I assured him. Unlike you, I keep my word. They moved toward the door, Ryan first, James following. As James reached for the doorknob, I spoke again. One last thing, James. He turned, eyebrow raised. When you try to cash that check, the bank will detain you. It's flagged. The moment you present it, silent alarms will trigger, and security will lock down the building until police arrive. His expression darkened dangerously. You're bluffing. Am I? You've been out of prison, what, 6 months? Still on parole, I imagine. Being caught attempting to cash a fraudulently obtained check would violate those terms, wouldn't it? Send you right back to Joliet. You scheming bitch, he snarled, taking a menacing step toward me. I wouldn't, I cautioned, holding up my phone so he could see the active call. Detective Ramirez and his officers are right outside. They've heard everything. On cue, there was a sharp knock at the door. Police. Open up. The trap had sprung. What followed was a blur of motion and sound. Ryan lunged for me, but James, ever the pragmatist, shoved him aside and ran for the balcony. The door burst open, officers pouring in with weapons drawn. Shouts of "freeze" and "on the ground" filled the apartment. Ryan complied immediately, dropping to his knees, hands raised. James made it to the balcony, but found more officers waiting in the courtyard below. Cornered, he turned back, his expression a mask of fury and grudging respect. Well played, Margaret, he said, as officers approached with handcuffs. Seems our daughter isn't the only one in the family with a talent for plotting. The difference, I replied calmly, is that my plots are designed to protect, not destroy. As they led him away, Detective Ramirez approached, concern etched on his features. Are you all right? That was a risky play. But a successful one, I pointed out. We have James and Ryan in custody, with evidence of extortion and breaking and entering, plus a direct connection to Lottie. Yes, about that connection. He lowered his voice. The recording captured James admitting Lottie hired a PI to find him, that she's been in contact with him for months. That changes the timeline of the conspiracy significantly. I nodded, understanding the implications. It proves premeditation extending well before my lottery win. She wasn't just opportunistically trying to get my money. She was planning something against me even before there was money to take.
Exactly.
Which strengthens the prosecution's case considerably.
He paused.
Are you sure you're okay with that? It means a longer sentence for your daughter. I looked around my apartment, the space that had been violated, the home that would never feel quite safe again, and felt a strange calmness settle over me. I'm okay with justice, I said finally, whatever form it takes. All rise for the Honorable Judge Michaela Fleming. The courtroom was packed even tighter than it had been for the arraignment. 3 months had passed since James and Ryan's arrest. 3 months of legal maneuvers, evidence hearings, and media frenzy. Now, finally, it was time for sentencing. Lottie sat at the defense table, somehow smaller than I remembered. The prison jumpsuit hung loosely on her frame, suggesting significant weight loss. Beside her, separated by their attorneys, Richard stared straight ahead, his expression carefully neutral. The plea deals had been finalized weeks earlier. Richard, turning state's evidence against both Lottie and James, would serve 8 years for conspiracy and accessory to murder. Ryan, the latecomer to the plot, had negotiated down to 5 years for extortion and breaking and entering. James, with his prior convictions, had received 20 years, effectively a life sentence at his age. Only Lottie had refused to deal, insisting on a trial. But faced with testimony from Richard, James, and Ryan, plus the mountain of physical and circumstantial evidence, she had finally capitulated 2 days before jury selection was to begin. She'd pleaded guilty to all charges, throwing herself on the mercy of the court. A mercy I wasn't sure existed for someone who had poisoned her mother-in-law while trying to murder her own mother. In the matter of State versus Charlotte Harrington, Judge Fleming began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. This court has accepted the defendant's guilty plea to charges of first-degree murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and extortion. She paused, her gaze settling on Lottie with unmistakable severity. Before pronouncing sentence, does the defendant wish to make a statement? Lottie's attorney leaned toward her, whispering something, encouragement or caution, I couldn't tell. Then Lottie rose slowly, her movements those of someone much older than her 35 years. Your Honor, she began, her voice raspy from disuse or emotion, I stand before you guilty of terrible crimes. Crimes for which there can be no adequate explanation or excuse. She turned slightly, her eyes finding mine in the gallery. I planned to kill my mother for money. I poisoned an innocent woman by mistake. I conspired with criminals to terrorize my family. These are the actions of a monster, not a human being. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. This wasn't the defiant Lottie of the arraignment, nor the coldly calculating woman I'd visited in jail. This was someone else entirely, broken, remorseful, seemingly sincere. I can't undo what I've done, she continued, tears now streaming down her face. I can't bring Patricia Everton back to life. I can't erase the pain I've caused my mother, my children, everyone who trusted me. All I can do is accept responsibility and the punishment this court deems appropriate. She paused, swallowing hard. My only request, Your Honor, is that whatever sentence you impose, you'll allow me some hope, however distant, of one day earning redemption, of maybe, years from now, having the chance to apologize properly to those I've hurt, to show them that the person I became is not the person I have to remain. With that, she sat down, shoulders slumped in apparent defeat. The performance, and I was certain it was a performance, was masterful. Even knowing everything I knew, I felt a momentary flicker of sympathy. Judge Fleming's expression remained impassive. Thank you, Mrs. Harrington. Does the victim wish to make an impact statement? My moment had arrived. For weeks, I'd agonized over what to say, how to encapsulate the betrayal and horror of having my own daughter try to murder me. Howard had helped draft several versions of a statement, each powerful in its recounting of Lottie's crimes and their impact on my life. But as I rose and moved to the podium, I knew those prepared remarks weren't what needed to be said. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I am Margaret Wilson, mother of the defendant, grandmother to her children, and the intended victim of her murder plot. The courtroom was utterly silent, every eye upon me. For most of my life, I defined myself through sacrifice. As a mother who worked multiple jobs to provide for her children. As a woman who endured humiliation and hardship with quiet dignity. As someone who believed that love meant endlessly giving without expectation of return. I glanced at Lottie, whose expression revealed nothing. When my daughter tried to poison me, when she conspired with others to terrorize me, she didn't just attempt to take my life. She forced me to question everything I thought I knew about family, about love, about my own worth as a human being. I paused, gathering my thoughts. The easy path would be to stand here and demand the maximum sentence. To paint my daughter as irredeemably evil, beyond salvation. Many would understand, even applaud such a stance. Judge Fleming was watching me intently now, perhaps surprised by the direction I was taking. But I've learned that easy paths rarely lead to healing. And despite everything, healing is what I seek, not just for myself, but for the innocent children caught in this tragedy, for the community that has been rocked by these events, even, perhaps, for my daughter herself. I squared my shoulders, my voice growing stronger. I ask the court to impose a sentence that serves justice without abandoning the possibility of redemption. Not because my daughter deserves mercy, her actions speak for themselves, but because I choose not to let her crimes define the rest of my life or the lives of her children. The gallery stirred, whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. In the darkest moments of this ordeal, I discovered something unexpected, strength I didn't know I possessed. Resilience I'd forgotten was mine. The capacity to fight not just for survival, but for justice and dignity. I looked directly at Lottie now, meeting her gaze without flinching. My daughter tried to poison me for money. Instead, she gave me back myself. For that, ironically, I thank her. With those words, I returned to my seat beside Jason, who squeezed my hand in silent support. Judge Fleming took a moment to compose herself before speaking again. Mrs. Wilson, thank you for your statement. It is rare in this courtroom to witness such grace in the face of such betrayal. She turned her attention to Lottie, her expression hardening. Mrs. Harrington, you have pleaded guilty to crimes that shock the conscience. You conspired to murder your own mother for financial gain. When that attempt failed, you continued plotting against her from behind bars, involving known criminals in your schemes. Lottie's head lowered slightly, her shoulders hunching as if under a physical weight. The premeditated nature of your actions, the recruitment of accomplices, the elaborate plans to frame your mother posthumously, all speak to a level of calculation and moral bankruptcy that this court finds deeply disturbing. The judge shuffled some papers before continuing. I have considered the prosecution's recommendation of 30 years without possibility of parole. I have weighed the defense's request for leniency based on your guilty plea and stated remorse. I have listened carefully to your mother's impact statement and her remarkable call for a sentence that balances justice with a possibility of redemption. The courtroom held its collective breath. Charlotte Harrington, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in the state correctional facility. You will be eligible for parole consideration after serving a minimum of 20 years. A ripple of reaction spread through the gallery, some clearly feeling the sentence too lenient, others surprised by its severity despite the victim's apparent forgiveness. Additionally, Judge Fleming continued, you are ordered to have no contact with Margaret Wilson or her family except through court-approved channels. Any violation of this order will result in immediate revocation of any parole consideration. Lottie nodded, her expression unreadable. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a finality that seemed to echo through my bones. It was over. Not just the legal proceedings, but something larger, a chapter of my life defined by victimhood and manipulation. As the bailiffs led Lottie away, she turned once more in my direction. Our eyes met across the crowded courtroom, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I glimpsed something genuine in her gaze. Not remorse exactly, but perhaps recognition. An acknowledgement that she had underestimated me, just as so many others had throughout my life. Then she was gone, disappearing through the side door toward a future confined by concrete walls and iron bars. A future she had chosen with each calculated decision, each poisonous action. You okay? Jason asked softly as the courtroom began to empty. I am, I replied, surprised to find it was true. For the first time in a very long time, I think I really am. The lakeside cabin that had once been a hideout now served a different purpose. Renovated and expanded with a portion of my remaining lottery funds, it had become a weekend retreat where Jason and Claire brought the twins to visit their grandmother. 1 year after Lottie's sentencing, I sat on the expanded deck, watching Brandon and Bradley race their remote-control boats across the water. Their laughter carried on the summer breeze, a sound that never failed to lighten my heart. "They're doing so well," Claire observed, joining me with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Dr. Morris says their progress in therapy has been remarkable." "They're resilient," I agreed, accepting the cool drink gratefully. "And they have stability now. Structure. Love without conditions or expectations." "Speaking of progress," Claire said, her tone deliberately casual, "the adoption becomes final next month. The judge is waiving the usual waiting period given the unusual circumstances." I nodded, a bittersweet feeling washing over me. The twins would legally become Jason and Claire's children, their connection to Lottie and Richard reduced to a biological footnote. It was what they needed, what we all needed, but it marked another ending, another transformation. "Have you decided about the visitation request?" Claire asked gently. The question referred to Lottie's latest petition from prison, a request to see her sons twice a year under strictly supervised conditions. Her first such request had been denied outright, given the recency of her crimes and the boys' ongoing trauma. But this one had come with endorsements from prison psychologists and a detailed plan for gradually rebuilding a limited relationship. "I'm still thinking about it," I admitted. Part of me believes children should know their mother, regardless of her failings. Another part fears what contact with Lottie might do to their progress, their sense of security. "It doesn't have to be decided today," Claire assured me. "The hearing isn't for another month. And Jason and I will support whatever you think is best." I watched the twins, their faces alight with the simple joy of play, their futures now protected by the family that remained. The trust funds I'd established would provide for their education, their health care, their opportunities. The adoption by Jason and Claire would give them the emotional foundation every child deserves. And I would be there, not just as their grandmother, but as the guardian of their story, the keeper of truths they were still too young to hear, but would someday need to understand. "Mrs. Wilson?" A voice called from the side path. Howard Fielding made his way carefully toward us, leaning more heavily on his cane than he had a year ago. "Sorry to interrupt your family time." "Howard," I greeted him warmly. "Join us. The boys will be thrilled to see you." He settled into a chair with a grateful sigh. At 78, he'd officially retired after Lottie's sentencing, though he still consulted on special cases, mine among them. "I have news," he said, accepting a glass of lemonade from Claire. "The last of Eleanor Vance's lawsuits has been dismissed." The judge was quite forceful in his ruling, called her actions a transparent attempt to profit from tragedy, and ordered her to pay court costs. Relief washed over me. "So it's really over. All of it." "The legal battles, yes," he confirmed. "The civil suits, the criminal cases, the trust challenges, all resolved in your favor." "And the Margaret Wilson Charitable Trust? How is it performing?" Howard's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Remarkably well. The Education Initiative has already funded scholarships for 50 students from low-income backgrounds. The Elderly Care Program has established 3 new community centers. And the Health Care Fund has provided critical treatments for dozens of families who couldn't otherwise afford them." Pride swelled within me, not the shallow pride of wealth or status, but the deeper satisfaction of knowing that something good had emerged from the darkness. That lives were being improved, opportunities created, suffering eased. "There's more," Howard continued, his expression turning serious. "I received a letter from Lottie yesterday, addressed to me as your attorney." My heart tightened. What does she want now? Nothing, surprisingly. It's more of a confession. A full accounting of her actions, motivations, and plans, dating back years before the poisoning attempt. She's given permission for it to be shared with prosecutors, with Patricia's family, with anyone who needs closure. I frowned, suspicious. Why would she do that? What's her angle? That's the interesting part. There doesn't seem to be one. She's not seeking early release or special privileges. According to her prison counselor, who included a separate note, this appears to be part of her genuine rehabilitation process. "You believe that?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "After everything she's done, all the manipulations and lies?" Howard shrugged. I've been practicing law for 50 years, Margaret. I've seen the worst of humanity and, occasionally, the remarkable capacity for change. Is Lottie sincere? I can't say. But the letter itself is compelling, unflinching in its self-condemnation. He handed me a sealed envelope. She asked that I give you this. It's your choice whether to read it. I took the envelope, feeling its weight, physical and emotional, in my hands. Thank you, Howard, for everything. After he'd gone, after the twins had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, after Jason and Claire had retired to their room, I sat alone on the deck beneath a sky brilliant with stars. The envelope lay unopened on the table beside me, Lottie's precise handwriting visible in the soft light from the cabin. Part of me wanted to throw it into the lake unread, to maintain the clean break, the forward momentum I'd worked so hard to achieve. Lottie had forfeited any right to my attention, my emotional energy, the space in my heart she'd once occupied. And yet, I picked up the envelope, turning it over in my hands. Whatever it contained, genuine remorse or manipulative fiction, it represented Lottie's voice. The voice of the little girl who had once called me Mommy, who had once believed I hung the moon and stars. The voice of the woman who had tried to murder me, who had orchestrated chaos and pain beyond imagination. The voice of my daughter. With steady hands, I opened the envelope and began to read. Mother, there are no words adequate to address what I've done, so I won't insult you by trying to apologize. Some actions are beyond forgiveness, beyond redemption. I understand that now, in ways I couldn't or wouldn't before. What I can offer is truth. Not to excuse, but to explain. Perhaps to help you protect Brandon and Bradley from becoming what I became. I found the letters from James when I was 13. But that discovery wasn't the beginning of my darkness. It merely gave form to feelings that had been growing for years. The sense of being different, separate, not truly part of our family. The conviction that I was meant for more than the life we led. I blamed you for everything, for the truth of my parentage, for our financial struggles, for the ways in which I felt inferior to Jason. It was easier to make you the villain than to face my own inadequacies, my own growing capacity for cruelty. Meeting James last year wasn't the catalyst for my plan to eliminate you. It was merely the final piece falling into place. By then, I'd already decided that you were the obstacle between me and the life I deserved. The lottery win simply accelerated a plan already in motion. I won't ask for your forgiveness. I won't ask to be part of your life again, or even the lives of my sons. Those privileges were forfeited the moment I decided your life was worth less than my desires. What I will ask is that you tell Brandon and Bradley the truth when they're old enough to understand it. Not to preserve my memory or reputation. I have none worth preserving, but so they can recognize the warning signs in themselves should similar darkness ever begin to grow. Tell them their mother loved them, in her broken, inadequate way. Tell them she was weak where she should have been strong, selfish where she should have been giving. Tell them she paid the price for her choices, as we all must eventually do. And if, someday, they want to know me, the person I am becoming, not the monster I was, I will be here. Changed, hopefully. Wiser, certainly. Never expecting or demanding, but grateful for any small connection they might choose to offer. You were right that day in court. In trying to destroy you, I inadvertently set you free. Freed you from the endless cycle of giving without receiving, of loving without reciprocation. Freed you to become the woman you were always meant to be, strong, decisive, formidable. I see that woman now, too late. And in my darkest moments here, I allow myself to wonder what might have been different if I had seen her sooner. With respect,
Lottie.
I folded the letter carefully, returning it to the envelope as tears I hadn't expected blurred my vision. Not tears of grief or anger, but something more complex, a recognition of waste, of potential squandered, of a relationship that could never be repaired but might, perhaps, be understood. The night air carried the scent of pine and lake water, clean and renewing. Somewhere in the distance, a loon called to its mate, that haunting sound that had always seemed to me like nature's own expression of beautiful melancholy. 1 year ago, I had been Margaret Wilson, lottery winner and attempted murder victim. The woman whose daughter had tried to poison her. The headline in a sensational true crime story. Now, I was something else entirely. Grandmother and guardian to two resilient boys. Philanthropist whose decisions improved countless lives. Survivor who had transformed victimhood into strength. The money that Lottie had been willing to kill for had indeed changed everything, but not in the ways any of us had anticipated. It had revealed character rather than creating it, highlighted strengths and weaknesses that had always existed beneath the surface, accelerated destinies already in motion. And in the end, it had taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that true wealth has nothing to do with lottery tickets or bank accounts. It lies in the courage to face darkness, others and our own, in the capacity to transform pain into purpose, in the choice, renewed each day, to move forward rather than remain trapped in cycles of bitterness and regret. I stood, tucking the letter into my pocket. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, decisions about Lottie's visitation request, discussions about the twins' future, planning for the next phase of the charitable trust's work. Important matters requiring clarity and wisdom. But tonight, beneath a canopy of stars that had witnessed the whole of human drama since time began, I allowed myself a moment of simple gratitude. For the family that remained, for the strength I'd discovered, for the life that stretched before me, no longer defined by what had been taken, but by what I chose to create. The poison wine had failed to kill me. Instead, against all odds, it had helped me truly live.